Okay, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio, the podcast for, us, martial artists, self-defense, personal development people. I'm just calling us warrior protectors these days because that's what we are, and that's who we attract, right? So, uh, as long as that's your theme and you're kind of walking that sword's edge where you got personal development on one side because we want to build something of value, right, with our lives. And at the same time, we've got the other side of the sword edge where we have the skills, knowledge, and willingness to protect that thing that we built, and not let things fall to the unknowing and the unwilling and the whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to introduce things along the way, but this is the first episode in a series of episodes that I'm going to be doing. That I thought it'd be really, really cool to interview some of my students that have been around for a while. They're the ones I'm choosing are the ones that are the most highly engaged, and they're using this stuff in their life. It's not a hobby. It's not a recreation. That kind of thing. So this is kind of kicking things off. Now, this won't be the theme every week, but I'm kind of going to drop these things in along the way. So this is one of many, but this will probably take us over several months to get through as a series. Okay, but I thought it'd be a cool thing instead of interviewing rock stars in the art and stuff like that, where people can get starstruck and they're listening, but it's more about there's an interview with a teacher. Okay, what I really wanted to do was talk to some folks that are just like everybody else, right? And but they're making it work. Okay, so anyway, we'll talk about more about that and a lot more, right? When we get back. All right, so I'll see you soon. Question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio, real training for real people in a real world. All right, and that is still my story, and I am still sticking to it. Right? I'm one of those guys that I could be wrong, and I could be so far in left field, I'm parking cars in the parking lot. But you know what? I'm going to hold the line until I have better information. Anyway, I apologize for my voice. We had a lot of rains and whatnot come through my area, and I think the pollen count is way up, and so I sound like, I don't know, I've been chewing on sand for the weekend. So I'm really not 90, but so anyway, welcome back to everybody that tends to follow along. This is episode 222. And as not per usual, James came sliding in under the wire. Not that you can see him or anything, but he was having some internet glitches on the other side. And I'm hoping that we can be glitch-free tonight. So we're going to use a little bit of a different format, I think. I don't know. We may jump around through different screens for those of you who are on live and watching things via video. If you're audio only, you'll miss all the us playing around with buttons and settings and see what happens, right? So anyway, as I was saying in the pre-intro little kind of lead-in, this is the first episode in a series that I decided to put together that I'm calling Student's Perspective. And this is an experiment. So we're going to see, all right, how this goes. But not being one to do what everybody else is doing. As a matter of fact, James talks about this all the time. He'll come in and go, do you know what so-and-so did? You no sooner released that program last week than I just got an email because I'm on their list and they're doing the exact same, well, it's not the exact same program, right? But they're doing the same thing. Last week, I was going to open up an opportunity for, 3 to 5 people to work with me one-on-one, because there's a lot of folks out there that they don't need a belt level curriculum or whatever, but they want to work on very specific things. So I was gonna do a one-on-one coaching kind of thing, and didn't I open a friggin' email and see that somebody else was doing something like that, right? In our realm, and I put the brakes on it, because I'm not stepping on somebody else's thunder, but at the same time, I don't need shit coming back at me like I stole somebody's idea, even though I had already worked out this whole process before I opened the email. But it's that, right? So anyway, the big experiment here is, rather than have interviews with, I don't know, the folks that everybody knows, or I call them the superstars, right? I know how I was when I was a younger student, and I know how people can tend to be. And being a Mikyo teacher, you don't study enlightenment without studying human nature. And I find that very often what ends up happening is the person is listening to the grand poobah or whatever, right? But they're not really listening, right? We think we're listening. It's kind of like we think we know something about a subject, kata or whatever, and what we really have is an opinion about it, and then that just kind of channels everything else. So again, what I thought I'd do was this little experiment where I interview students. So I'm literally going to take a back seat here, where I'm going to be more like the journalist, right? I have some questions, and going to let them do the talking, right? So as the first episode, right, I just kind of reached out to a couple. If I didn't reach out to you first, I apologize, right? But somebody had to go first. Although episode 200, which was 23 episodes ago already, Jesus criminy, count the weeks, and we're consistent, not pretty consistent. We're consistent. I had how many on? 5, 6, something like that, right? And we had a good time. That was a 3-hour episode. As a matter of fact, one of my good friends, who's hardly ever on, sent me an email that I didn't see until after the episode was over, episode 200. And he said, I got to go to bed, man. You guys are still on? Seriously? Oh, we're just having a good time. Sipping at some whiskey, whatever. Everybody had their own thing on their end. But this guy was on for that one as well. I invited him to be on with several others. And I think it went really, really well. So you may know a little bit about him. You may even be in his area. He does teach. So I'm going to give him an opportunity later on, right? If you stay with things long enough, and if you're in his area, he can let you know how to get a hold of him if you want to make contact that way. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and jump into this again. So we're calling this the Ninjutsu student's perspective, and excuse me, goodness. All right, so let's just go ahead and do this, and I'm going to introduce Lee Davis. All right, he's one of my long distance students. Let's fire Lee up here. Ta-da! Oh, I don't want him in a small thing there. But if we do a side by side, look at that. Look at that. I'm even advertising the academy. Thanks for being a walking billboard there, Lee. That's awesome. So I'm going to just kind of kick it off with, Lee's been training for a long time, but he had, time off like lots of people did, right? And Lee, remind me, one of the things that I definitely want to talk about, or I want to ask you about, is, the leap that you made after all that time off, that life has pulled you away. Because one of the things I get from I believe well-meaning students is they want me to tell them how to restart. And see, you and I had at least one of the same teacher, and you know how that's going to come out. But even Hatsumi Sensei, Jikai Sensei on the Mikyo side, all these, right? My answer is always the same. You just start. And I don't understand But anyway, we're going to talk about that a little bit because that's one of those big sticking points that when I sent you the question outline about what I kind of tentatively wanted to talk about, I didn't put that on. But I do want to, during this series, I do want to introduce you to some of these guys, because if you come in for seminars, whether it's virtually or any of the camps, like Lee's going to be at our Daikomyo-sai in January. He's done breakout sessions in the past. He's got a very specific skill set just outside of the taijutsu that I try to tap into, so that my guys that have those kind of skill sets can share them. So anyway, I got James in the wings, right? James likes to hide because that's, he's nodding. I threatened him tonight that I was going to put him in the hot seat, but every once in a while, just out of the blue, without telling him, James, what do I say in class? And we can never remember when we're put on the spot, right? Shit, I was just telling somebody 5 minutes ago, and now I can't remember. Anyway, so I got Lee on, and so I didn't ask Lee for a mini bio or anything like that. Lee's a Navy vet, but he started I think when he was a teenager. So anyway, so Lee, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and not that this is a dating app, right? But I do want people to recognize that as unique as they think their situation is, we're all the same, right? And they're going to see a lot of this, and there's going to be the names will change, and we're not protecting the innocent because there is no innocent. The names are going to change across these episodes, but I hope that people just keep hearing the same, had this problem, had this obstacle, had this thing, resolved it this way. And, so anyway, age, what do you do? What are some hobbies? Anything that's risque or might get us kicked off the platforms, keep that to yourself. I do. I keep my stuff to whatever. But just start there, right? And we'll hold the martial arts background, but just a little bit about you as a person. So who's Lee Davis?
Hey guys, Lee Davis. Let's see. Very awkward Navy vet, 48 years old. I am currently right now in the work as an educator, para-educator on the high school level, working with the special needs population.
What is a para-educator? Is that you kind of but almost do? Educate somebody? I'm sorry?
It's the new word for teacher's assistant.
Sorry. That silence was me okay. Either say, when people recreate these words, they either are justifying their job, or I don't know, they're trying not to step on certain people's toes. And now, pretty soon, nobody's going to know how to communicate except warriors. And we'll always be rubbing people the wrong way. We try to be polite and we try to be respectful and all that. But some things just go too far, right? So anyway, you know what they say, if you let something go long enough, next thing you know, you won't be able to get out of it because,
too many weeds.
Somebody, well, I'm just going to experiment with this knot. Just can you just hold your hands together and hold them still, and just want to try something out. And that's how they've gotten so far as they have now. I don't want to get all political and stuff, but we have 150 give or take things that you need a license for today that you didn't in 1900, right? And all of these things, if you follow the history of them, all they needed when they wanted to put the whole thing in, say throw this big thing out, and they just keep pressing until you go, okay, look, this one's not too bad. I understand the logic of it. I don't agree with it, but if I give you this, will you shut up? And then a year or 5 years later, they do it again. And it just, next thing you know, they're halfway down the friggin' football field. So, but this is all Ninjutsu as well. I mean, this is stuff that Hatsumi Sensei has always been talking about, but people tend to do just the whole nodding horse kind of thing. And, I'm still waiting for the, but anyway, so back to Lee. So you're a para-educator. You can, dude.
That's the word. In fact, it's not the legal word in Georgia. it is not legal to say paraeducator. I should be saying paraprofessional. Other states allow the word paraeducator. It's beyond crazy. I still use paraeducator.
What the hell is an assistant professional? And see, I don't believe that you have to have a job that used to be considered one of the professions, doctor, lawyer, whatever, right? I mean, you can be professionally minded, but just these freaking names, Anyway, so sorry. Go ahead. I never thought this would happen in Georgia, of all places.
Yeah. We used to we would throw tea at 2%, not 2% increase, 2%. But
wow.
Anyway, so what else about Lee? The general Lee. So when I'm introducing myself to a new person, I usually say I'm one of two people. You can either call me General or Bruce. You'll never forget my name. So,
fair enough.
Okay,
fair
so
enough.
hobbies, classic or known as wild camping, where you don't actually go to a park or anything like that to go camp on a campsite.
Yeah.
You get involved with people who own lots of land. You own lots of land or whatever, and then you are allowed to go. You get permission, and you can go in a wild place and camp.
So no electrical hookup for hair dryers.
Oh,
no camp stored down the hill just in case the raccoons come and steal all your shit in the middle of the night.
Nope. Candles and campfires.
There you go. That's awesome. That's how I like to camp. I just, we have a couple of state parks around. Well, we have a lot of state parks in this state, but there's one half hour, 45 minutes away that has two very different areas. One is what you would normally think of as like a campground thing. And they all have spaces, but the one that I go to is the tenting area. And so there is no hookup. There is no, if you're going to if you have to use the lavatory or shower facilities that our state parks have for campers, you literally have to like drive over to the other area, or you make yourself a latrine because that's what you need, right? And so first time we went, I took a group of students because we were going to work on wilderness survival stuff, starting with, we took commercial tents, but they were, they were small and all that. But during the weekend, we were going to work on debris shelters and all kinds of things, right? And so it took us 45 minutes to identify our spot because it wasn't like a drive-in parky kind of thing, or for your camper, or there wasn't a roped off or identified spot where your tents would go, and it was all rocky, and so put your tent in the wrong place and run off gets you if it rains, and that kind of stuff, right? So I thought it was great, but stocked up on a whole bunch of things, and one of the students we took along just volunteered to cook the meals and stuff, so everything was over fire, and it was all awesome. So that's my kind of camping. My wife needs the electrical hookup and the hairdryer. Anyway, all right. So, well, that kind of leads into your other business and stuff. But we'll talk about that down the line. Other than I think I mentioned to people, you have Old Ways training, which I thought was really cool. Any other side gigs? Any other things that you get? Well, I know a couple of them, but you tend to be like a Renaissance man as well. So.
Well, in taking your advice from months ago, I used to have 5 divisions of Old Ways training. Now I've just got the one because there's so much I want to be able to do, because there's so much of the ways of the older people.
Yeah.
There's things that you don't want from the past in the future, in the present.
Sure.
But there's things from the past that would, were it to be applied today, work ethic, working hard on anything, putting your focus into it. Lots of older.
You're pushing the line now.
Say again?
You're pushing the line.
We need this.
It's already getting risque. We just got started. Pace yourself. But absolutely, yeah. Work ethic, focusing on things. Yeah, good. So so you're not. This is not just a I don't know, wilderness survival guy, self-defense kind of thing. Because I think part of what you were doing with that group was also, I don't know, I'm gonna use this term, and hopefully I don't ruffle any feathers, although I know I will. Right? Basically, like how to be a man or how to be a stand-up guy, or resolving those kind of male kind of issues and things. Right? Where how can I be a protector, but also not the asshole that's being an arrogant douche because I need to be in charge, kind of thing, which is really something that's on the mandala in the realm of the leader. From the enlightened perspective, I mean, if you overshoot it, right, you get Mao and people like that, right? If you undershoot it, what you get is the dad who signs up to be one of the coaches on his kid's soccer team, or a scout leader, and that's where they get to express their authoritarian side. Do you know what I mean? It's my way or the highway. They move in and they become like a little Napoleon kind of thing, right? From the enlightened perspective, not that a leader doesn't have certain qualities and think a certain way and have certain characteristics about them, but more often than not, they don't set out to lead, or they don't put their name on the ballot to get voted in. They just find themselves in a position where other people just want to get advice from them. They want to get counsel from them. They want to know what their opinion is. So they find themselves in a position. It's kind of like the old King Arthur story, right? King Arthur, most people think about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table as these were already his guys. What most people miss out of that story is they all had their own kingdoms, right? They heard his vision of Camelot and literally gave up their quests because that was worth dying for. That was worth protecting. And I think that's a huge thing that runs through the warrior ethos, that, it's not the tough guy thing. It's there's something that I'm, willing to die for. And it's not my opinion. It's, whether it's family, whether it's community, whatever. Right. And, but anyway, yeah, so you have that. We'll come back and talk about that. But so you do have your training group. So let's just roll back around to the whole training side. So tell us about your martial arts background. Were you always just in ninjutsu, or did you do other things? Self-defense programs?
Well,
how old were you when you got started?
I was about 12 years old.
Okay. And so was it just the school that your parents dropped you off at because it was close to home, or?
No, actually. I remember I have one vague memory prior to getting started in the Bujinkan Columbus dojo, of going to a dojo somewhere and talking to someone about it. It's a very vague memory, but I remember learning the whole keep your fist straight, because it was a small impromptu, hey, this is what you should do, and this is what an example of how I would teach you, and this kind of a thing. I think it was Taekwondo. I'm not sure.
Sure.
But we passed one time. We lived about 52 miles out of Columbus, Georgia, and my dad worked in Columbus, Georgia, so he would go in there every day. We were going in to visit a friend of his at Mission Square, and right there in the Mission, it's a V strip mall type thing, 2-story.
Okay.
In the center of the V, there's this big sign, black background banner, yellow letters, Ninjutsu self-defense. And I remember watching a cartoon of these animals that were able to accomplish things, and regardless of their impediments, regardless of their inabilities of size or anything like that, they were able to get stuff done. And I loved it. And they learned this stuff. So just stars in the eyes. Dad went to go to another one of the places there. I said, Dad, can I go see this? He says, sure, son. I go over there, and I'm in the doors, the all window, and I'm just like, I couldn't go in.
Well, it obviously wasn't a Cobra Kai school, because he'd have walked out with paper towels and Windex and gone, boy.
So I waited to my dad. My dad and my mom came back by, and he said, you want to go in? I said, you asking me a question. I didn't say that, but that was the attitude I had. And we went in, and the rest was history. I was like, this is the one. This is where I've got to be.
Awesome. So you didn't have a lot of experience with other things other than what you might have seen in movies or TV, because when we grew up, there was it transitioned from like rough and tumble real fighting stuff. I mean, I'm a big fan of like the old classic black and white movies and stuff too. So I'll watch one of these things, and somebody will jump over a freaking couch onto somebody that they're fighting with, or and just, I mean, it was the way things would happen. Or fights started the way fights started, and we go from punching, and then they'd be wrestling and knocking over furniture and stuff, and I just remember it transitioning. And the first time I really realized it, now this is in retrospect, looking back, watching movies, and like Captain Kirk is doing like karate chops to knock people down, right? And I mean, Spock stuff aside, there's flips and chops, and it wasn't there was the occasional normal fight kind of thing, and it was like a brawl, but they would throw some martial arts stuff in, right? And then, oh man, friggin' 70s and 80s hit, and like everybody, including space aliens, were doing Taekwondo. That's all the fights looked the same. Like somebody would wind up to punch, and it didn't look like the guy on the street. They would take up some Shotokan pose before they throw a punch, or but yeah. Anyway, so how long were you in it while you were a kid? So you started about 12.
I believe.
Were you in it until you left for the Navy? Or?
No.
Okay.
I was in it for, I want to say, about 4 years, 4 or 5 years. There was a period in time where I broke my collarbone, not rolling correctly, a few times. And at the time, the level of superstition that I had was pretty high. So I said, well, maybe it should be time I not trained, instead of thinking, this is a test. Get better at what you're doing and keep going.
You know what they say, vitality is wasted on the youth, right? By the time you're wise enough to apply all this stuff, you're like, now shit's too brittle.
What is it?
I might pull something.
The youth may walk faster, but the old know the way.
Yeah. But don't tell them that. Mm-hmm. They don't want to know that their brain hasn't fully developed yet. And I don't even mean like it's not turned on. This has nothing to do with intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's certain parts of the brain that haven't even grown into place yet, let alone get switched on. But, and then what's even funnier is parents that argue with the teen. Like, I don't argue with people that don't know anything about the topic. So anyway, so you took some time, and then when did you go in the Navy? You go in right after high school? Because that's when I went in the Army.
I did.
I graduated, and 19 days later, I was on an airplane for Fort McClellan, Alabama.
They have a delayed entry program that is required now, and that's what I got into. I graduated high school in '96 in May, and was on the airplane to go to boot camp in September.
Okay, so I was I was just under a full year because delayed entry would only go for a year, at least when I was doing it. Remember, I graduated in 1981. So where were some of you in 1980? Anyway, so and the delayed entry program, I think, was fairly new at that point. And so my junior year of high school, I think it was during the summer. I didn't even it was before my senior year started, because that's only 9 months. So, and I was on delayed entry for 11. So like school for my junior year was either just ending or had to have just ended, and I got bored with summer really fast. And my cousin came over. He was trying to get extra rank is what he was doing. And he runs into my bedroom. I'm trying to take a nap. And he goes, "Hey, dude, you want to join the Army?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?" I was too young. So my stepdad signed for me. I guess technically, not legally, was my dad because he adopted me in second grade. But either way. So yeah, I was committed to the military almost a year to the day before I left. And I mean, part of it was, life for me. Life had to change. My parents were in no position to help me with college. I mean, I had none of that prep or primer stuff except for maybe grandparents on my mom's side that were not just like grandparent inspirational that way, but I mean, like, it was half. You can do whatever you want, but you're going to need these qualities and work ethic. So if you're gonna slack about it, then don't even talk about it, kind of thing. That was my grandfather, right? So, but I was the son he never had because he had two daughters, right? So, but anyway, so mine was like that too. So I mean, I graduated literally. It was a countdown to back when U.S. Air used to fly. So yeah, remember?
U.S. Air.
Yeah. I was traveling to Japan when Northwest Orient was still like a luxury airline. Last time I flew on them before they went defunct, I got on that plane. I'm like, holy shit! I hope the engines are in better shape than the upholstery on the seats. Oh man, if you flew coach on that, it was awesome. But yeah. So anyway, so let's see. So about, would you say 3-4 years and it was Ninjutsu, right?
Mhm.
In Columbus. Who was your teacher?
Chris Weekly.
I know the name. Was he under Shoshi Malmstrom as well?
He was.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, there were only 3 people in the country to train with, and everybody else was a satellite of them. And so let's see. Did they make a differentiation? I do in my dojo. I don't expect that anybody else does what I do, but did they make a differentiation between the ranks? Like, was there a difference between an adult black belt and, let's say, a black belt that was, well, you'd have been 13, 14. What, did you make your black belt? Not did you make it. I mean, I could see you making a black belt because you got a wild hair, but did you earn your black belt?
Yes, but not while I was training with him.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, how far did you go? They'd have been what, Q ranks then. So how far did you go?
5th Q, I believe.
Okay. All right. Cool beans. And I think you said you didn't study any other martial arts. So, so you took time off. You said 3 years. So we're looking 15, 16 when you took time off.
Mm-hmm.
And then military started at 18, right? So what would you do between? How'd you trip over yourself and fall into a black belt? Other than, like, clicking a buy now button on the internet, which wasn't all that prevalent back then.
I kept in touch with the dojo and the family.
Oh, cool.
I was actually I lucked into this amazing situation where my dad got some land and property, and Chris wanted to teach on the land, and Dad said, "Well, I'll charge $3 for every head you bring in, and that's it, so long as my son goes free." I was at everything. So
why would you not be?
why would I not?
I asked that, but COVID showed me that, free and long distance and whatever, people didn't even have to leave their house and were friggin' dropping out of programs or not showing up for classes or whatever. So, free.
Yeah,
a lot of people, free it has no value. So they're not really losing anything. And I've actually found that the people that I've given rides like that to, I can count on 3 fingers in how long have I been teaching? Since 89. So 3 fingers, how many people honored a barter or some kind of an agreement like that. They drop out faster or, whatever. So it's amazing. Yeah. Anyway, so you stayed in touch and then you got back into training. So was that before you went into the military then too?
After I went in, and after I got back out, I started. I went to a local college and started a small training group there.
Okay.
And, the wife, now ex-wife, Debbie Baxter, she was the one that gave me my Shodan, first degree black belt. So that's where I got it from.
Gotcha.
Creating the group, the training group down in Americus, Georgia.
So was that training group then was a satellite of Debbie's group, or is Debbie the ex-wife of Chris? I don't know the genealogy. So is it still the same group?
No,
still the same teacher connection.
There's no longer any Bujinkan Columbus dojo, though I do believe there is a Columbus Bujinkan dojo. Totally different group.
Okay.
She later had a women's self-defense class called Thorn of the Rose. But I think it was just
Rosicrucian sounding.
Yeah. It was good. But that's pretty much the extent of it. I don't think Chris has already passed on, actually.
Oh, okay.
And Rick Greener and a few of the others, Jeff Davis and a couple of other guys, they kept their training on from the original dojo.
Sure.
But I kept ties with Debbie. It was like a big family situation. They were friends with my parents, and it was good.
Okay. Well, lots of people don't have those lucky little fortuitous things to train. But like I said, I mean, your dad set it up for you, but you could have, been a bonehead, or you could have just, taken it for granted or whatever. So how long did you serve in the Navy?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And then you got out and moved back home and did the group. A lot of people set up groups on college campuses or at YMCAs or any place where they've got, kind of a rec room that you can negotiate for. And I mean, you can find places like that all over. I mean, that's what I did. I mean, I had classes in our local area here, 2 different YMCAs. At one point, church basement. I didn't go to that church, but it's the approach. What doesn't work is we're going to do ninja classes, and we train with swords. Don't try to impress the person who's going to let you sign out the community room, right? Just some basic self-defense. We're just trying to help the community be more safe. We'll give a discount to your members, right? That always works really, really well, right? So yeah. Okay, cool. So no other rank in any other one. So so Shodan is what you got. And then when did that taper off? Because I know when you came to me, you had been following my stuff. I can't say off and on. I only know when somebody is doing something when they actually like sign up or whatever. But I there for a while I was doing free webinars, and I was doing little things here or there that were very focused. And this guy named Lee kept signing up for this stuff. I mean, we've only been formally connected for, you know better than I would. I'd have to look it up. Year, 2 years,
First,
3 years.
Well, yes, the formally could yes.
Like we had that first conversation, and you said, "Remember when I said there would come a time when, like, I just felt now's the time." And then you had this long pause, and you just said, "Now's the time." I thought you repeated yourself, but anyway, but I don't remember how far back that was. I mean, we haven't been together, connected as teacher student for, I mean, nothing close to 5 years or anything like that. I mean, there's lots of people in my life that probably that, well, I can say unequivocally, they don't know me from Adam, but I see them as a mentor or as a teacher or whatever. And, whether it's I've read all their books or I've gone through their programs or whatever. Now I would never say that we have a teacher student connection, but like there's a connection on my side. And, and if I ever had the opportunity to mentor, be a mentee with them, I would, I would work for them for free. And that throws a lot of people off. Right. But, a lot of the really, really, really successful people in the world, they got their education by actually working for it. That's how they paid for it, because that put them in that person's orbit, like, not 24/7, but nearly. You want to learn how somebody thinks or operates or makes decisions, work with them, right? Because you'll find out very, very quickly that their relationship to things that we, were taught growing up. If you grew up, poor, middle class, whatever, like I did, even an association with money and how you think about it, right? You inherit those things. You inherit self perception and what's possible for you. And even if they didn't use words, right? You learned this paradigm because that's what you're living, and you hear it all the time, right? So my martial arts teachers were always they were always mentors. I mean, I've had a couple that were martial arts instructors along the way, and that's exactly what it felt like, right? I go to class, learn technique. It's just a very different kind of approach. Anyway, so let's see. So I got the Ninjutsu. So yeah, well, let's stay with this thing. So when we got connected, was Ninjutsu always there? Was it always, I don't know, was it at forefront, back of your mind, whatever? Because one of the questions I sent you in the outline was, what drew you back to training? What drew you back to Ninjutsu, right? Like what, when you decided that you were going to re-engage, okay, what were you looking to get out of a program? Because I see this as a solution to a problem. Always. I mean, somebody goes and buys a cheap $5 video at Walmart, probably not a problem, unless that problem is I still have too much money and I'm not complaining about being broke, so I should probably buy this thing that I can watch on Netflix or on YouTube or whatever. But where people tend to see this as a very cut and dry, it's martial arts, it's ninjutsu, it's whatever. To me, those things are very, very vague. When anybody calls my academy or we strike up a conversation on the street about them, they're inquiring about classes or they're inquiring about what we do or whatever. Very quickly, right? I steer the conversation to a position where, as a ninja, I can collect information, because I can't answer your questions with any kind of clarity for you to make a good decision if I'm just, answering it the same way I answer everybody else, or I'm telling you what's great about it because that's what was great for me or whatever. So in the first couple of sentences, I don't care if the first thing they say, on the phone is how much are classes, right? Very quickly I steer it around. As a matter of fact, I think you went through, did you go through the instructor training program that I did a while back? No? Okay. Because I taught people how to do this script that we use. And, I say, what is it that you want to get out of martial arts? Because I need to make sure this is a good fit, right? I mean, if you're looking to be the next MMA UFC champion, not that I can't teach you something, but it'd probably be best if you trained in that paradigm. Because I'm going to teach you things that I can promise you are in the no-go list for the things you're not allowed to do. Right up front, right? And it's not because people misconstrue that, right? You guys are tougher and you're the killers. And no, this is about survival. This is not about, winning a trophy or whatever. But anyway, so I guess my question still is, well, let me modify it a little bit. Was there a time in your life from, I don't know, when the training group, did it fade away? Did you just pull the plug one day? Did you get a job and you had to move? Was there ever a period in there where you weren't thinking about it, you weren't researching, or was there a lull?
There was definitely an ebb and flow, but there was never a point where it was zero. I always wanted to, like I was always on Google or whatever the other, Jeeves, Ask Jeeves or whatever it was.
Sure, all those that came and
right.
went.
Gave myself there.
AOL.com, you've got mail.
Right. I was always on the search engines looking for, with using those tag words, Bujinkan, Ninjutsu, that kind of a thing.
Do you remember when you did a search on the internet and you actually got back like research information and not just a list of like, advertisements and bullshit. But you actually got, and a lot of them, the papers that I got back, these were things that were curated by universities and put up on their servers, because whether I was studying Mikyo or Buddhism or Zoroastrianism or whatever caught my attention that was attached or that was very connected historically and, came from the same roots, whatever. When I remember downloading and printing these things out, God, 95% had, the headers or footers that would print out at the top or the bottom. It was just it was the big long ass URL, right? And that almost always came from a university server, right? Yeah. So, okay. So you were always, and I think that's true about most of the folks that are trying to get back in, or they're trying to restart their training. Nothing ever really stopped. And so for a lot of them, and I can hear it in their voice or in their writing, there's something just gnawing at them, right? That there's this desire to, and I don't mean a misdirected desire. I mean, there's this, I can't explain it drive kind of thing, right? It's almost for some it's a pull, for some it's a push. But at the same time, there's also some anguish, some dissatisfaction, discontent, whatever, because it's not happening. It's like this way. And so life has kind of become a certain way. And so, like, how do I, right? There's not a school around, there's not a, and then there's that fondness for the old days, and they're 20, 30 more years older, right? So, there's all these things like, I really want to do it, but my back, my head, my scars, my whatever, because the last memories they had was that 15-year-old or that 25-year-old or whatever training, and they could do a lot more. And I think sometimes people get caught up in the, they want to do, when they say they want to do Ninjutsu or they want to get back into training, they want to do that thing that they have a Polaroid snapshot of. There's an old word. But they want to get, I think the key word here is they want to get back into training. And we have to watch our speech, right? Because you can't go back, and you're not going to get back into training. You just start again where you are. And the cool thing, just like growing up, when you start again, you're not starting again like you did as a baby trying to figure everything out. You're starting with a whole bunch of experience about, ups and downs and all those kind of things. And, you're able to make better choices. So it's to me, it was never a matter of going back, but I felt the same thing. I mean, the military, I was in security forces, counterterrorism, all kinds of things. So it wasn't like I wasn't using it. I use techniques on a regular basis, strategic thinking and all that. But, oh, God, the anguish of, and while I was training on my own, and I was always trying to keep my training group going, no matter where I was stationed. There was always what the anguish for me was, I couldn't get to the dojo. I couldn't get, right? Because I was a member of my teacher's. I remember one time I went a year and a half, right? And that's, for a lot of people, they're like, a year and a half, that's nothing.
It's something.
That's holy shit. And I remember, I ended up, let's see, the seminar was, I think, in Tampa. I think Mark Russo.
Okay.
Yeah. He was one of my peers coming up through this. And he hosted the seminar. And so I think we were on a university grounds, because we were most of the training was done outside in a field. Remember back in the day when we trained outside a lot, because, the ground's not level, and, you better learn to roll a whole lot better, because a tree root could come up out of the ground and, you roll that shoulder blade right over that baby, and you need to keep going, but anyway, I remember I got there and got suited up, and we're out, and we're just stretching and stuff. And Sensei Hayes hadn't even arrived yet. And, but I just remember that feeling of there was almost like I could have sighed, you know what I mean? I'm back kind of thing. Right. And it wasn't like I was back in training because I quit and never thought about it or whatever, but there were students and the uniforms, and there's the anticipation of the training to start. And it was just that experience. Yeah. Home. There you go. Home. Yeah. And, the higher in belt level I went, what most people don't understand is that teachers, they don't have anybody that they're accountable to. It's kind of like a business owner, right? There's nobody that I'm accountable to, which is why I hook up with mentors, which is why over the years I've spent thousands to be accountable because they would be asking me the same questions that a supervisor, manager, whatever in a corporate setting would ask, right? So, but anyway, one of the reasons that I set up what was originally the Budokan Kuryu Shibu, because I wasn't going to call it a dojo until I was a black belt, because I had a training group all the way through my Q levels, because my teachers told me I needed bodies. You need a training group, which is why I tell you guys, you need a freaking training group, right?
Yep.
Well, I don't know. Look, I just told you how to do it, right? It's not like I'm making this shit up, So, but that's, I set out to do that for my students, right? For anybody that wanted that, and part of it too. And it's not that it doesn't go on in other martial arts. I'm sure it does. I was in other ones as well. It's just the reason that people are there tends to be a little bit different. Friendships still get formed and all that, but Ninjutsu has always been a family-oriented thing. And I don't mean that families join. It's like if you weren't a member of the family, oh, you better be bringing some value, or you're gonna die before you ever make it, right? Before anybody ever says, yeah, you can stay. But anyway, so but here's the big question now, and it's probably different. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it's probably different from when you first got started, because it sounded like there was a kid that was all jazzed about like martial arts, and you like what you were seeing, and so you don't have to tell me twice, and you don't have to put my arm up behind my back. I can take these classes. Yeah, right. But today, right, Lee, today, where's the value, right? What is it that you get out of the training, and what is it that you're looking to get out of it the longer you stay? Does that make sense?
It does. Gosh, that's a long bullet list. Let me work with some of the most important points that,
Okay.
Because Ninjutsu is so different. You start
No.
the way you think, right? I mean, but just the way you think about it, the way someone says you need to get Kusari Fundo, and someone says, well, I don't know how to do that, and then another person in the back goes, 2 padlocks and a bike chain. Come on, dude. The creativity of it, the not just the creativity, but the creativity focused on accomplishment of the goal that you want to have in such a way that you live like a king, not because you have the money to buy the stuff, but because you have the stuff. You didn't steal it, but you're like, well, for me, I make a lot of my stuff. I've got leather sheaths for my camping knives and things of that nature. See if I've got anything.
Yeah, I've made my own holsters.
Right.
I made my holster. My first duty station, I went to the rec center, and they had all this stuff, and I was doing model building and all that. And I found out they had this thing, and I went through a class, and I didn't like the old cavalry style holsters, and we ended up getting a provost marshal. That's basically a police chief for the military police, and this guy was a cop, not somebody that just followed orders and all that, because regulation was you had to wear these fucking old, cavalry style, big old flap holsters and stuff like that had the US on the out. Yeah. And you can't get a weapon out quickly out of those things. Right. And so he came in and he said, my guys can carry anything they want. Well, a bunch of the officers, regulate. So he gathered up several of us that were on the pistol team, and we're work the patrol and stuff, and some of these other officers that had their complaints, and he said, settle this really, really quickly, right? I understand what regulations are, but we're going to go to the range, okay? And my guys are going to use the holsters that I've allowed them to get, so they can not die on this, but you're a number of people I've had tell me, well, it's just a military cop, man. What can you know about? You do realize that I was apprehending infantry and artillery and let's see, I worked at Fort Bragg, so special forces, like trained killers, right? So these guys get drunk, they go less easily than everybody else, and the average drunk taking a pot shot at you, not the same as some spec ops guy that anyway. So we went to the range, and he said, it's real simple. Okay. If you can outshoot my guys, and what we did was we did draw from the holster to get the weapon out, because anybody can go to the range to qualify, take the weapon out, get everything set, and all you're doing is doing static shooting, right? Because they're only counting holes in a target for marksman, sharpshooter. You remember, right? So we had to, get this stuff out, right? We were emptying magazines before these guys could even get the freaking flap off the brass button that was on the, you know what I mean, to get their weapon out. And he goes, until you can prove that way's better. Yeah. Now I had to wear regulation stuff in lots of other places, but as soon as I learned that, I thought, let me try my hand at this. And then everybody else in the unit was paying me to make holsters for them. So nice little side gig, but yeah. So, but this creative mind thing, I think this is just huge. And I make this point every once in a while, and I'm sure I lose listeners. I mean, because I can see when people unsubscribe from my stuff, and when they unsubscribe, it was either the last straw or they haven't been on for very long, and that's not what they wanted to hear. Same thing with people that stop showing up consistently for the webcast or for the podcast, right? One of the things that sorry, I don't filter well. I do. I filter a lot. So what comes out is way nicer than what could have come out. But I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. And what I mean by that is I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in that they may be defining this stuff the same way they see all other martial arts, because maybe they got on later on with a teacher who was not trained by somebody from that. Now it's called old school, like it's an insult. I'll be old school every day. And besides that, keiko, right? I mean, your uniform, one of the names for the uniform is a keikogi. Keiko is old ways. Okay. So your keikogi is clothing worn during the study of old ways, right? So, but I can see how easy it would be if somebody was training with somebody else, or all that they're looking at are techniques and stuff. So it's a martial arts option among martial arts options, right? It's a style, right? But you and I know that Ninjutsu doesn't start there. It starts with this view on the world. I mean, in the Togakure school, the very first area of training, Seishin Teki, personal clarity, right? And observation, study. There's a whole shit ton of stuff in there, right? But the thing that really rubs people the wrong way is when I say, all they have are, I'll use their word, reasons, because I shouldn't use my word, excuses or roadblocks or whatever. They want to get involved. They want to get into training in this realm where at our very core, we're troubleshooters, we're problem solvers.
Yep. And
it's a creative, strategic process. I mean, it's like Hatsumi Sensei has used this phrase, he's used it. I just liked it a lot, where the analogy, especially coming up through the 80s, was this is the same mindset that people fantasize about when they're all jazzed about a James Bond movie or the MacGyver kind of mindset and whatnot, where, you can joke all day long. You took a hammer, an egg, and a rubber band, and you made an airplane. But you're taking what you have because that's all you have. And you're going to do the best you can with that. And I mean the best you can with that, right? You're not going to lament, well, this is all I have. You're going to look around and go, holy shit, I got this, this, and this. Okay, I can't do that over there, but I can do this, right? You know, and well, what am I going to do? Make a slingshot? Well, that's a real ninja way to do things, right? If I can make a blowgun out of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, a post-it note, and a friggin' paper clip, then and we're talking Fukia, right? So now I'm doing blowgun training. Okay. Not only did I not have to spend the money and go buy a damn blowgun, I needed a piece of paper, a couple pieces of scotch tape, right? A post-it note, or just a smaller piece of other paper, right? And a pin or a friggin' paper clip or whatever. And what the hell?
Done.
You know, well, I don't have a file to make it pointy. You got a sidewalk outside. We've been doing that shit since we were kids, right? Sharpening sticks and whatever. So, you know, but here's my thing. And this is what pisses people off and drives them away. And I watch numbers on here. I watch, I check my email stats when people are like, unsubscribing and stuff, and some of them it's because I'm old, fat, and bald, which, fantastic. But in ninjutsu, we learn very quickly. Be careful, because nothing in ninjutsu is what it looks like, right? So, but they want to get involved in something and they want to be a black belt or a master or whatever of this thing that requires, right, that you have this ability. You have this, it's a mindset, right? Yeah, there's a drive in the heart, but there's a mindset. And I'm not saying that everybody has to have it when they come to it. I know I didn't, right? I mean, a lot of people know my backstory. I was abused, all kinds of stuff. I had really low self-esteem. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to be a good cop and be able to apprehend people because of all the physical abuse and, the way I thought about myself and whatever. You quickly suck it up and get the job done. But I had teachers that were just unforgiving. And I don't mean that they were mean. I translated as mean early on, but I'd come at them and go, yeah, but you see that, kind of reminds me of Monk, right? But see, the thing is, and here comes the reason, right? And they would just go, yeah, you're just gonna have to figure it out. Like I remember going to a Shadows of Vegan Ninja Festival. Don't ask me the year. But I was testing for third Q, second Q, something like that. I raced myself through a cast for 6 weeks to get it off 2 days before the seminar, because I wasn't not going to the seminar. Okay. It had to be second Q because in the Kasumian program, handsprings were the tie-in for second Q. So we're not even talking in the black belt levels, right? And so I remember the day or two leading up to it, because this was one of those festivals where we trained for like 3.5 days. We would start in an evening and then 3 solid full days of training. Sometimes there were 4. The ones that we specifically did taking us through the elements, they were big things. But anyway, I remember having this side conversation out in the hallway because we were training in a hotel conference room. Well, 4 conference rooms that had the walls removed, because that was back in the day, right? And so, Stephen had come up and he said, so you're testing this time, right? You're going to review. And I said, yeah. But the problem is, right, this arm just came out of a cast, so I don't think it's strong enough. Is there any way that I could demonstrate that at a future time? And he said, no, I can't let you slip by on that. Okay. Because you could be injured in an actual situation and somebody could shove you back into, I don't know, a couch or whatever, and your body ends up flipping over, and you have to be able to manage that that movement? He said, I don't know. You have to figure it out. Collapse one arm a little bit more and use your flattened forearm, but you're going to have to figure it out. And so I did. That was the first time that I had somebody, and I'm always better at this way, but that was the first time I had somebody do a gyaku nage on me, the armbar throw over the shoulder. It's supposed to send you, right? You get their arm and you come up underneath. So it's an armbar to then and you go, right? And so I asked my training partner to show me what they're. I guess I need to make sure that they knew how to do it properly, right? How's your gyaku nage? He goes, oh, I love gyaku nage, and I'm like, great, okay. I need you to do that as the attack so I can demonstrate a forward handspring. He goes, how the hell are you going to do a forward handspring? I'm going to have one of the arms. I said, yeah, I know. I'm going to do it one-handed. Okay. Because the break was way down here. Him affecting my elbow, he would have, the arm here, and he would have, this is where all the torque goes, right, at the elbow. So I didn't have to worry about putting this arm down on the floor. So instead of demonstrating the standard kind of thing, I had to do it. He told me I had to do it. And I thought, well, shit, if somebody does a gyaku nage on me, or they're in Aikido or whatever, the way out is, right? And so my forward handspring was that, and my back handspring technically was no-handed because I had the same guy whip an onikudaki on me and torque my shoulder, where I had to spring up off the ground and take myself, which is the way that's done in combat anyway, right? You literally just go over that axis. So, but I didn't have anybody that played Western academic school. Can I take the test for the 50th time? Can I slide by on these requirements? Can I, so yeah, I don't know. What are you going to do? Ask the killer? You gonna let me slide today?
Wait, not ready.
We used to have a joke. Actually, in Shidoshi Moms from school, we used to have a joke that you get this shit right. I don't like rolling, or I don't, whatever. I can't do it without this. He goes, what the hell are you gonna do? Guy comes up and whips out a knife on you and stuff. You're gonna go, wait, hold on a second, right? Give me that. And you're gonna go to the trunk of your car and open it up, whip out a mat, put your uniform on, hand him a rubber knife instead, right? That used to be our thing, but anyway. So I laugh, but so anyway, all right. So so you obviously like the creative mind. I mean, shit, you make baskets by hand and all kinds of stuff. I still have one that you sent me that I think is a sleeve for I haven't used it for what it was designed for. Because I don't want to mess it up. But I think it's a sleeve for like a wine bottle or like an olive oil bottle or something like that. Yeah, and it's you got some skills, man. So I'm just thinking, if you make your black belt, you're just going to make it out of that.
I know how.
Yeah, there you go. So, all right. So that's one of the bullet points, right? This idea of the creative mind and problem solver. I mean, that's Ninja 101, 202, 3, and I'm just going to stop now. Anyway, well, you know what? Let's do a transition thing here. James has been just in Zazen over there or something. I don't know. He keeps, I don't know if he's rocking back in a chair or what, but his face keeps phasing out. He reminds me of an old like Outer Limits TV show kind of thing where the guy got too much radiation and he phasing in and out. Anyway, who do we have on, James? Anybody say hi, or any comments up to this point? Anybody want to tell both Lee and I that we're full of shit? Not the same shit, obviously, because we're states away. Oh my God. That's awesome. Well, apparently that's what happens when we have a split screen.
We're some 80s TV show entry.
Look at that. I just hit a different button.
Where's Brandy? But okay.
Oh, shh. James wants to talk.
Maybe my screen's froze, so I can't even see what it looks like.
Oh, really? Holy shit. All right. Well, let me bring up the. You really are having internet issues over there, aren't you?
This could just be the computer.
Oh, okay. We're still a couple of months from you getting a new.
They should have had their sale already, and they did not.
Bastards.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so where the hell is chat? Oh, there it is. All right. So we can't see that on the screen, right? I just brought it up. We can't see it on the screen.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. So let's see. Rab877 said hello. Dale said it's improvising. Yeah. Victor, better late than never. Okay. Whatever. Anything for you, Sweet Pea. Mary Barnett, good evening. Dave Fletcher, a raining belt made from black rabbit pelts. That would be neat. What's a raining belt? I'm native.
Speech to text is probably the culprit there.
Oh,
I was thinking
if my belt were raining, my crotch and legs would be wet on a regular basis. Let's see. Jamie's on. Come on, both of you. Hello, Jared. You guys having a conversation back and forth? It's a good thing that I'm not on. Good evening, everyone. Para-educator. They parachute into school each day. That's Dave Fletch. See, Dave's one of those people that you meet these people in training and stuff, and you just felt like you've known them like your entire life. So much so that when they make comments like that, or worse, if it weren't my class and it wasn't recorded for future lessons, I know this is, but whatever. Every once in a while, I have to push the system to see how far it'll take. Right? It's just one of those things where you haven't known them for very long, but you feel like you know them really well, and questions like, "Are you wearing a condom?" pop out. And then when they give you that quizzical look, you have to remind them that if they're going to act like one, they should dress like one. So anyway, it's the General Lee. Hey, Lee, looking very dapper. Look at you. All right. Well, you're the dapper one. All right. Hello, Mrs. Davis. Oh, Melanie's on. Look at that. Didn't even know your wife was hiding back there. And then let's see. Never miss a comment. Oh, no, that was. I just read a comment from Restream, our service. All righty then. It reminds me of the president reading end of quote because they're reading the teleprompter. Anyway, and that's no indication of political leaning. Thank you very much. Just like when people try to pull the whole R card, right? Not racist. I hate everyone equally. Right? An asshole comes in all colors. I don't care if somebody's pink with purple polka dots. Right? What's that line from Forrest Gump? Stupid is as stupid does. Yeah, asshole is as asshole does. Anyway, so how did I shift this? What did I do? There we go. All right. Whew, I just felt like Monk. All right. Now my screen looks the same again. It looks like it's supposed to. All right. James, thanks for letting me know everybody that was on. I didn't mind being the ventriloquist dummy for a few minutes there. It's really good. He sounds just like me, doesn't he? Okay. So, Lee, what else you got? Value, right? We're still on what value you're getting out of it. So what else? I mean, obviously that was the main one because or is it just the one you lit on? This art reminds me of a skit that I saw with Robin Williams a long time ago. He got started at this comedy place that was called, I think it was called the Improv, but it wasn't what most people think of as the Improv these days. This was a small club, and it had this stage, black curtains and whatnot, but on the stage at the back where the curtains split, right, were two bookshelves, right? And just had knickknacks on them. Okay? And he came out and he sounded like he was just, prepared because he could do his skits that just sounded like he was just winging things. but he had a format, right? And it was funny because at one point, I think he switched gears because he was heckling a heckler or something like that, and then he lost track and he couldn't remember any part of what was supposed to come next. And he kind of looks over his shoulder, sees these bookcases and looks at him. And then all of a sudden he just goes, look at all the toys. And then finishes his set by just making jokes out of like all these things, right? This art reminds me of that kind of thing. What can I do with this? Well, that's not cool looking. Yeah, but I can do cool things with it. Right. And so, but anyway, what else you got? So, yeah. What were you looking to get out of it?
Originally, it was just the starstruckness of it existed in the world, because it was one of those things like way back in the day, they used to not believe that you could rub two sticks together and create fire. They used to not believe that ninjas were an actual thing. Now it's almost taken for granted.
Yeah, which allows us to hide even better, huh?
Exactly.
I mean, how cool is this martial art? We have motorcycles and blenders named after us. I mean, come on.
Now put a blender on a motorcycle, we'll be all right.
That's right. That's right. That'd be so ninja, man.
But who would think that the person in the orange collared shirt would be a ninja? No one. And that's the point.
I know, but I still have fantasies.
Right. We all do. These days, I am looking for what I want out of it. I want the connection. I want the skills. I want to be able to do skills. I don't want the same skills I had way back when, because that was back then. I want to provide something for people that makes the light bulb go off. That's how you know a teacher is like when you're teaching someone something, anything, doesn't matter. It could be underwater basket weaving, and they're like, I got this. That same energy goes to you as a teacher. It's like,
well, I think that speaks to life purpose. You know what I mean? Because when you're doing something that does it for you, no matter how much work is involved in it, right? You just, whether the task was completed and, you know, it's something you can be proud of, or just like, I did that, right? But being able, and it's not just seeing a student's eyeballs light up. I mean, that does it. But man, when somebody comes back and says, you know, I don't care if they were horsing around with a friend or they were playing volleyball or whatever, right? And I went for a ball, don't even know why I did it, and I saved it. And then like I was just crashing into the ground and I like just rolled over and got right back up and I was still in the game. And like a bunch of my friends laughed at me because like, you know, I fell down. And I remember looking at him and going, you can't do that. You know, they're just that, or it was somebody like actually attacking them, or it was an argument and they, you know, they kind of steered things around and just didn't happen the same way that it always did. They felt themselves being more strategic, more tactical, listening and, you know, letting certain things go because that was going to be like throwing kerosene on a fire and I ain't got time for that shit. This doesn't need to be a 3-day argument or whatever. And it just, you know, it just went, see that kind of thing for me. Because that tells me that this is not a replacement for bowling or Netflix binge watching or whatever. Do you know what I mean? it's getting in there, and this person is like they're using it in their life to make their life more uh, more happy, easier, more results driven kind of thing, right? That's because I say it all the time. Any monkey can learn a technique. I truly believe that any monkey can teach a technique if, and there's actually a word, if we're aping it, right? I will do the moves, you will copy it. Um, Anybody can do that thing, but man, for somebody to just get it and be able to use that to, I have a guy, and he's on every once in a while. He surprises me every time he's on. He's in Perth, Australia. He's one of my cop guys, Carl. Carl has gone through several job promotions and advancements and things like that along the way. And he'll check in with me email wise or whatever. And here's somebody that's like applying things, right? I remember one time he took a job, took a position, still in law enforcement. I mean, he was in the same department, nurturing and recruiting and developing CIs, confidential informants, right? That's Chunin level ninjutsu. And what I think a lot of people miss too is that if you're in management, or hell, you're in parenting, you're in teaching, right? A part of that job is Chunin level stuff. If you could just see the other, right, the CIs, the students, the children or whatever, as operatives that need direction so that they can produce the results or gather the information or whatever that we need for the whole clan to be more successful. But that can be really difficult for people to get the practicality out of the stories, right? Because a lot of people can regurgitate. There's gaining, there's tuning, there's joning. I remember when I could do that, right? That was worth. Shoshi Malmstrom used to say, "Dude, that's like not even worth a nickel." You could have that in one hand and shit in the other, and the shit's still more valuable, right? Because at least it's a fertilizer, right? Same thing with wishing. Well, I wish I could do that. I wish, right? Oh man, a couple of teachers in my life. I remember introducing one of my students to one at a seminar. Finally went along. It was the first time he had gone to a Hayes seminar, and we didn't even get started. Took him up, introduced him, and there was that starstruck look, right? It's just shook his hand. I would have given anything, to meet you. And
No,
Hayes smiled, looked at me. I smiled and looked back. We had the same thought because I got it from him. And he looks at me and he goes, obviously not enough. Right. So anyway, so I mean, these are the things that you get showered by. Right. And anyway, so what, I mean, okay, well, let's just keep going because you said you have a bullet list, and I don't know that we have time for a bullet list. So, What do you think? Well, this is still related. So, what do you think is the biggest value that you currently get out of the training? Like, what's the biggest thing that keeps you? I mean, you train virtually, dude. You show up for Zoom classes, dress for class. I know you probably don't have a uniform or whatever, but you dress like a ninja, right? So you're in your training clothes, right? And you've got your gear and you have your space cleared out and you're doing it solo, just like Jeffrey Fletcher in, where's he? James, Washington State. It's not in Oregon, right? He's in Washington State. Yeah. So these guys show up, right? You're not sitting your ass in a chair, whatever, right? It's not a lecture, right? But my point is, you show up, you're going through the classes, right? I'm afraid one of these days you're gonna light your damn house on fire because you keep scribbling out those notes, and I can relate because I'm that guy too. But what's the biggest value that you get? Because you put a lot into this.
The biggest value that I get is twofold. It's an AB. Number one, there's no upper limit. There will never be a moment where I would think that I've learned everything I need to learn. And two, very much similar to that, is that everything I'm learning applies pretty much everywhere in my life. It's the concepts involved, it's the principles involved, it's the thing that on a very basic level, one of the first things we teach is to move out of the way, out of the line of attack. Well, if you can do that in a conversation, it's all pervasive and all encompassing. And if other people don't have the eyes to be able to see that part of it, and so they go, "Oh, you're just fat, bald, and ugly. Whatever, go away." Let them go. I mean,
Of course,
they're not worth the time.
Same thing I continue to tell my wife, and I've told every ex along the way. Look, I want you to be happy, and if that means you're going to be happy with someone else, somewhere else, not with me, right? Then I want you to be happy. And in all honesty, if we're not working, I'm not the guy to chain myself into hell. So, and I wouldn't do that to you either, right? So, right. But people can use the words, right? But then when the moment arrives, it's kind of like the, if I'm ever at that point in life support or whatever, right? Don't resuscitate me, right? I don't want to live that way. One of my guys, how was it? Tim is an RN, and we had this conversation one time, and he's been a nurse for a long time, and he said of the thousands, and that's probably at this point in his career, he's probably taken care of over 10,000 patients, right? He said, of all the people that have told me that, in the moment when they were crashing, only 2 stuck to that saying. Because in the moment when, right, that's what you got, right? Everyone pleaded for him to save them, even though they had that bullshit, kind of thing, right? So, but that's the only time it really counts, right? I have students all the time, right? What's the most important belt?
The next one.
Well, yeah, it could be the next one, right? I agree, right? I think it's the white belt because, like, I make my students earn it, right? Second class, third class, because the first class I give them a couple of things that are really, really simple. Not difficult to learn. The most difficult to learn is the first part of our 3-part student creed, right? Which has to do with belief in self and being ready to learn and like, I believe in myself. I can accomplish my goals. This is a goal, right? So, but everything else is easy, right? I mean, it's an evasive movement, nothing really difficult, right? But the reason I do that is that's a first line of vetting to see what kind of a student I'm going to have. Because if you're not willing to go home and learn this, and it's going to take you 3, 5, whatever classes to get this right, and good enough is for you because you're looking to know what the minimum requirements are to get this thing, we're already not going to be a good fit. So, and I'm not looking for people to be superstars, but I am looking, maybe I didn't inherit this from Shoshi Malmstrom because I always believed this, but we had a t-shirt in that dojo. It was a training t-shirt that said, if you're not giving 100%, you're taking up too much damn space. Of course, he also had a different t-shirt that said, if you die during training, we split your gear. Because gear's expensive.
Wasn't it, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space?
He had different variations. He had I still have a deck around here somewhere. Hopefully I didn't lose it in the fire, but I had a deck. They were the postcard size kind of things. He got these blank ones, and he sold decks of these things, right? And it was a stack. And instead of calling it Buddhism, they were called Buddhisms. And there were these sayings that we all, and there was 50 cards in the stack or whatever. You just go through these things, and yeah, he had a lot of them, right? I mean, one of the big ones was, if you don't believe this shit works as it is and you think you need to change it, there's the goddamn door. Go train someplace else that you think works better. Why the hell are you here? Right.
Yep.
So, right. And that was to black belts. That was not, I don't know if he said that to white belts or not, because, when I formally established that relationship with him, we had a friendship, and he was always a senior all the way, but I was with Shoshi Hayes first. And then when that business fiasco happened and whatnot, then I switched. But there was no uncertain terms. I mean, that's how his dojo, he stopped teaching because he was doing auxiliary police work, and training ran over. He was doing like tactical stuff. He had freaking grease paint all over himself, the camo, and was all whatever. And training ran over, and he had a class to teach, and it was across town, right? Where was he? Norcross?
Tucker. Well, yeah, I think it was Norcross, and at some point Tucker.
Might have. Yeah, I can't remember which one it was at the moment, but it was all the way across Atlanta, right? Because he was working with the Atlanta PD, and pulled through a freaking drive-through. He never ate food like that, right? Just to shove something in his face, so his energy wouldn't crash, right? Gets there, runs into his office, changes into his gi, comes out, still has freaking camo paint on his face and everything, right? It's a black belt class. This is the story. I mean, I wasn't there. This is the story that I got because we had a conversation. The reason I always hosted seminars was absolutely greedy. And it wasn't for the money. Because if I got enough people to show up, I didn't have to pay. But even if I did, who's taking him to all the meals? He didn't want to just go back to his hotel room. No teacher does. Just go back to the hotel room and like veg, whatever, right? So we'd sit around for hours and talk. And I could ask questions. And it was all this extra stuff. People showed up and got the hours for the training. And there's me. Like, I get to pick the topics for the seminar, right? I get to, I get his ear for, 2-3 days. I'm driving him back and forth to the airport where I am, that's a hour and a half, almost 2-hour drive one way just to get him to the airport. Right. And to bring him from the airport. So yeah, there's a little bit of catching up with life and stuff, but we'd hit on a topic and you listen, your teacher starts talking about something, that's life related. It doesn't have to be a freaking Musha Dori or an Ichimonji no Kamae or whatever. You freaking listen. Right. So yeah, that was, but he had a bunch of, and some of them weren't nice. How's it feel to make it to second degree black belt and finally learn the right way to do something? You could hear sphincter slam shut. He'd be nice for a while, and all of a sudden he'd just yell across the dojo, "Stay right there, god damn it, I told you." And come across anyway. So, but at the same time, later on, we're all sitting out, having a cigar or telling jokes or whatever, because it's, you mentioned home earlier. It's what families do, right? And it's his job as the teacher, right, to be in that father, grandfather role or whatever, because the lessons get passed down. Right? Everybody wants to change things. The reason we do the things we do these days is because our ancestors kept learning from mistakes and inventing things to make life easier so that we didn't fucking drown or die of that thing because you drank the water you didn't purify or whatever, right? And so here we are, and every culture is a end result of that. And it's not that it doesn't, it's not going to keep evolving. Of course it is, right? But to do it all in one generation because everybody before me got it wrong, how fucking self-important does somebody need to think that they are, that they can just rewrite everything.
'Cause they know
Kind of
better.
reminds me of a statement that was made by another old guy. I love when people tell me that that's an outdated thing. That's just an old thing. So I love it. I'll pull another old quote. How about that? One by a guy named Voltaire, right? If God didn't exist, man would have to create him. And ego does it all the time, right? Every time we say things ought to be, and this is wrong and whatever, and we haven't tested shit. We just want it because we think it should be that way. That'll make things easier for me, right? It's all self-grandizing, right? And it's not that it won't make it better for some people, but before you ask the good that this will do, ask yourself that once human beings start managing this, what's the worst that can happen? And see, that's how ninja think, right? And it's not a pessimistic view, right? Before you go run around doing shit, right? What damage is going to be done? It's like all these
Preparational.
people that are, what's that?
It's a preparational view.
Yeah, of course. You know.
Right.
So here's a question: have you ever needed this for self-defense?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a few times.
You work with school
Nothing.
students, I bet.
Do what? Nothing life threatening, but just yeah, like one of the things, like you mentioned about the catching a ball. One of the earlier things when I was in high school, I was running to go get lunch and brushed by one of my friends, and he didn't know who I was, so he tried to trip me. He tripped me. I did a roll. I kept going. He had to go find me in the lunchroom and say, "What did you do?" I said, "I just rolled. I'm hungry. Get away from me." But just small things like that helps. Like I don't know. Nowadays, it is more on the middle or high level to where instead of being offended that this young person, pseudo adult, is trying to offend me and letting that happen, it's just, well, that's maybe not the best way you should say that. And all of a sudden, I didn't expect to get that response. And they, you know, they reset.
Awesome. Let's see. We recovered that. Other than the distance, right? Because I mean, we have a formal teacher-student relationship, which most people claim shouldn't work. And you've been training long distance and improving and learning skills, and every once in a while you have a training partner to work with, and well, you have a group that you start back up. I guess it's seasonal, right? So you create bodies to work with, right? But then every once, occasionally you come in for seminars and stuff. But other than the distance, what are some of the hurdles or problems that you have with being a long distance student? Like, what are the things that you deal with on a regular basis that have to be handled? Excuse me. That's different than somebody else? No.
Right.
Just no. I'm betting most of them are the same that people have. But what are the things? I'm not asking you what hinders you. I'm asking you what hurdles or problems do you have that, if I had a different personality type, I might say the universe is conspiring against me to keep me from training. No, what do you have? You know you have them, but you keep them in check, or you took care of them before you engaged in this thing, right? So obviously you have work issues. I mean, there's work timing, because I know your class attendance change shifts based on like beginning of the school year or testing times or those kind of things, right? So that kind of shifts things around. So what else do you have? You have distance, and
so I've got distance. There's work schedule. Anyone wanting to do any type of distance training needs to have a dedicated area. You have
You
to
train in your living room, don't you?
Yep. I
You
prepare
just
the
move
area
the furniture out of the way
every night. Yep.
every night.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not the couch. I actually move the camera so that the couch doesn't interfere.
Yeah, no,
But
I get that, right? But
same thing.
you make space, right? And again, I think for a lot of people, this gets it's like a static picture, right?
Mhm.
I don't have a forever space. James, don't we have? Didn't I do? I thought I did a class for. I did for Inner Circle at one point, and we turned that into a bonus program. People getting the foundations course, right? The Mod One foundations course. It's not just techniques, right? I have programs that I plugged into that answer certain problems, right? Like I don't have space to train. I did a whole freaking class on how to do how to create training space when you don't have any space. Right? You could live in a freaking, efficiency apartment that has a bedroom, kitchen, everything short of the bathroom. Well, maybe, but I mean, that
Open
might be a
concept.
downside. But yeah, so but I and the reason I plug those, I think a lot of people are so used to buying like a martial arts or a self-defense program, and they're buying 50 or 60 techniques or whatever the number is, right? And then they get an upsell and they're being sold like another 30 techniques. Then they're being, they get another upsell, right? And so, oh, don't forget knife defense and that kind of, it's just like shit stacked on top of shit. Because if you're not going to do anything with any of it, well, then what the hell, right? But what I wanted to do was help students solve these problems, right? Because often people don't know how, right? Or, and here's a phrase that I picked up. Do you know who Joe Rogan is?
Yep.
Joe Rogan had a guest on one time, and they were talking about like just the you live long enough, and people end up just with a certain type of mindset, and it's maybe not depression, but it's not too far off, or they're angry or whatever, right? And the topic came around to, yeah, but what do you do, right? How do you fix that? And what he said was just, here's this comedian MMA thug, right? That really smart guy, really freaking intelligent. And what he said was, he said, I believe that most men, now he was talking about men, but could be everybody else, because now that women live pretty much the same lives that men do, and I know there's arguments against that, but they do. They get the same kind of stress. They get the same kind of, all kinds of things going on, right? So, but he said, most men live a life of quiet desperation, and it's of their own making, because they followed the plan that somebody else gave, who was doing the same thing, right? So you bought a house, now you have a mortgage, or you didn't, and you made certain choices about jobs, and you I did a KUDEN one time on exclusions, right? Like, you make a list of choices, but based on where you want to go, there's a shit ton of those choices that are no longer choices. We exclude those because they can't possibly get us where we want to go, right? But people have made choices about who they were going to hook up with, who they were going to stay with, all kinds of things, right? And they end up, there's certain type of jobs, certain so much income, arguments with the same person. It ends up being a same shit different day, and then they start looking for. A lot of people start looking for outside sources that are the reason that their life is shit. Except even if those people over there are corrupt and they're manipulating the system and whatever, it didn't change the fact that I know those days. I absolutely know those days. And until I recognized that if I want a different life, I have to make different choices. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to feel good, because that's not my habit pattern. Right. So, But what he said was, he said, you do as much as possible to like use every waking hour, right? To focus on changing things that have to be changed. Whether you start with habits, right? Making extra money and you squirrel it away, right? Or stop pissing away money on dumb stuff that, you know, you're going to consume it and it will do nothing for you later, right? All these kind of things, right? And he said, you do everything you can so that you create, not only create, but get to that point where you can execute on your exit plan to get out of that that thing. But I and it's I know it sounds easier, right, to just say it, but having lived it, you have no idea how tired I am of people telling me how much I don't understand, right? Okay. Like, one situation is unique. I told an ex this one time, right? But they actually they knew it, right? They knew it. They were just trying to live in a way that they didn't have to think about it. It's kind of like, I know I'm going to die, but if I don't think about it, right, then I don't have to think about it, right? I don't have to feel it. Right? And that is, the more unique you think you are, the more unique you think your situation is, the more average you actually are, because everybody thinks they're fucking unique. Everybody thinks their situation is unique. So congratulations.
Just like everyone else.
Right. And, you know, nobody had, I mean, Stephen Hayes was going through a freaking divorce, lost everything, right, when he went to Japan. He sold whatever he still had left to go. He's either going to figure this out, or, you know, he's going to come back homeless because he sold the house, going to, you know, turn the martial arts school, which was a Taekwondo school, over to students, right? So, you know, but I think that's huge, right? I mean, I think what people, and I don't know if they miss it because they glossed over it in all the freaking books that have been written by Hatsumi Sensei, whatever, right? I don't know if they glossed over it, or if they just skipped over those chapters because I had to get to the picture ones of the techniques. I know times that I did that. I would go and see, make sure, you know, I don't have those. Okay, good. But I still went back, and I mean, I'm the guy that reads from the introduction on, or the preface, because that's what gives you the premise as to why the damn book was written to begin with. Right. So, or it just doesn't fit the vision. So it's not important. Like, I can get to be the indestructible ninja with all these techniques, but strategic thinking, tactical operation, you know, deciding ahead of time what I am willing to step into or not, right? What the end result is that I want, right? And then I will make decisions based on what will move me in that direction, and I will eliminate or avoid anything that will not, right? But, you know, so, but this, at this point in most people's lives, right? Because I'm not talking to kids, right? We're in this situation where we've developed all this karma, right? So the process is a process of recreation, right? You just, you know, which is really cool because Mikio is like this, right? Zen. I remember when Shoshi Hayes moved from, he had rented a room in this plaza on the outskirts of Dayton. It's just, Carol shopping. Anyway, but I'll remember it probably when I'm asleep tonight. But it was in a shopping plaza, because, you know, everyone in martial arts school is teaching out of, you know, at a certain point. And so we just had this room in the basement, and I only went in for seminars and then did classes or came in from military training. So we had that, but at one point he bought an old tobacco barn in Germantown, Ohio, right? And it still had freaking tobacco leaves hanging off of it, right? I mean, it was used for storage for years and everything, right? And so, but it was really great because he used that as a lesson, right? About like different mindsets and what this process is, right? Because I think people, that we've been convinced that we can have the drive up window or the cheap version at Walmart version, right? And then that'll make all the difference. Like, I'm going to get the lamp from that one Christmas movie and put it in my living room and my life will be different. My brother currently thinks if he lets his hair grow differently and he looks different, then, he'll live differently. I hope that is all it takes. But yeah. Anyway, so he hopes it's all it takes. Anyway, so but he bought this thing, and it took a while, for us to move classes over. And we were having this discussion one time, and he was talking about like the difference between Zen, which is how a lot of samurai-based karate systems, that's what they're wrapped around, that kind of mindset, that empty hand, empty, whatever, right? You work with what you have. It's all fine. And how that's different from the Mikyo or the Ninpo approach, right? And so he used that as an analogy, but we're actually doing it with our mind, with our life, right? And so he said, when I got this thing, it had been used for storage forever, right? It hadn't been used for tobacco, whatever, but all this stuff is still in there. There's bales of rotting hay, and there's all kinds of like old farm equipment and whatever. He said, I came in and I looked around and I knew what it had to be. But at the same time, I also knew that I didn't want to lose certain elements because it gave it a certain energy. It gave it a certain air, right? I mean, that old tobacco, still kind of tacked to nails. It's dry and whatnot, but it added to the smell. It was almost like a natural incense kind of thing, even though it wasn't lit, right? But he said, if this were a Zen approach, we would have gone in and taken everything out, right? You empty your cup, right? Everything would have been pulled out, everything, right? And then we would have moved stuff back in and thought, well, maybe I'll keep this thing, and then we have to move it back in, right? And so it's a really long process, right? He said, but the Mikyo or the Ninpo way of doing it is first you take an assessment, right? But we all know how much ego likes that because it's much easier to judge than to assess, right? So, and you figure out based on what the vision is, what the end result is, which needs some clarity. That's why the first level of training in Togakure is Seishin Teki, right? What do I want it to look like, right? And for a lot of people, they can't define that, which is why we have in the life purpose discovery process, the first exercise isn't to answer the question, if you could wave a magic wand and design the perfect life, what would be in it? Because most people can't do that, or they can only come up with a couple of items and they're very vague, right? Most people, it's cultural. We've been trained to think in the negative, right? Bitch and complain about all the stuff I don't want. Well, great. If you don't know what you want, well, then you must want the opposite of what you're bitching and complaining about. So start by writing down the bitches and complaints about all the stuff that would not frickin' be a part of that life. And then move to exercise 2. And if you still can't think about it, go back to exercise 1 and write down the opposite of every line item that you had, right? Because that'll produce something different, right? So, but, I had to think about what that was. And before I moved anything, what you realize is that some things definitely are going to go. They have to go. Other things I want to keep, but I don't need to carry them out to carry them back in again. What I just have to do is realign them so that they're in the place that will better serve this. Now it's not a tobacco barn. Now it's not a storage barn. It will be a martial arts training center, right? So I'm keeping this, but where does it go? Does it have to go out of the way? Does it need to be like put up as a decoration? How will it serve, right? And then there's going to be things that we definitely need that's not here. So I'm going to have to go out and get those and bring them in. It's the same process. There's shit we need to get rid of. There's things that we need to be realigned, and there's things that we need to learn that we don't have or develop, and we have to get it from somebody else who knows, right? It's the same process. Okay? This is not a value meal number one decision. Well, I mean, but a lot of people do that too, right? You know, it's what everybody does. Well,
you don't have to do what everybody does.
That you're taking clues and cues and advice from, right? Or, right? So, and again, this is the hard stuff. This is the stuff that my teachers made me face. So I don't know what you got in your groups and stuff, but anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to usurp this. I'm supposed to be the interviewer, so sorry. Where were we? So you mentioned a couple of obstacles and whatnot. What have you done or continue to do to overcome or handle those obstacles? You married the right woman for one, because you don't have to, like, you know, hide your training or justify it or whatever.
She's mentioned about wanting to get into it a little bit, but that's a.
I keep telling you, you need a training partner on your Zoom classes.
I do, and she hears it. But anyway, the things that I've done is when available. When available, when available is not what I meant to say. You save up, you get certain things that you need. I use my cell phone for, in fact, I'm on my cell phone right now, and a tripod for the distance learning. You get the equipment that you need. We are lucky enough to have an extra TV that sets aside, and I cast from my cell phone to that TV so that I can get you big. And I can see what's going on.
Make me bigger. Make this head bigger. Fantastic. Right.
Tools. You need training equipment. If you can't buy a training knife, carve one.
You know, we used to use the old 2-finger folder when we did. You know, when we didn't have our training knife, right? Yeah. A lot of people. I mean, my first martial arts uniform. I mean, I was a dirt poor military, lower enlisted, with a wife and 2 kids.
Ooh.
And the wife, that one, let's just say, you know, I don't know if they had these same things on the Navy base or they called them something different. I think they're universal. A Four Seasons, which is the equivalent of a convenience store, and price the same, right? You go to the commissary to get things because that's your grocery store, and things are priced differently there. But if you're going to the freaking snack bar or the Four Seasons, she was there on a regular basis. Our first 2 months, 3 months in West Germany, what was then West Germany, right? She ran up such a long distance phone call or phone bill that had we not had military housing and I was left with enough so that I could feed my family, out in the world, we'd have been freaking destitute because she needed to talk to her mommy back in the States every day for an hour. Okay. And in 1980, was I there? 1984, 5, something like that. $400 phone bill for a month on an E3 or E4's pay. Yeah, that sucks so bad it sucked at sucking. That's what that was. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, you come up with those things. So, let's see. Let's just jump here too. What was the biggest reason that you chose to try? I mean, you were online all the time. I mean, I'm sure just like James, you were tied into different people's email lists. You saw different people's things. I mean, everybody and their brother has, well, except for the people that flame my videos. Everybody else has videos up that actually show like they're trying to show what they know. But the trolls never never have anything, and they don't even have a fake MacGyver profile picture or whatever. So what was the biggest reason that you chose this one?
Hatsumi did not regulate a lot of the dojos out there. And I saw a lot of the dojos out there did not have the energies that I wanted to include in my life. You're not one of them. I don't
How do you know that?
I don't
How do you know
that.
I mean, just because we sat down and had lunch, a couple of times, and I try to be consistent.
I know that. I guess that was pretty vague. When Hatsumi changed over to the Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu part, a lot of people took that as gospel and said that that's the only thing there is, not realizing that Ninpo was the thing that's after you'd learn that. You have never stopped teaching that. Is that more specific? It's because I'm looking for Ninpo. I'm looking for like if I wanted to learn Budo Taijutsu, then there's quite a few other martial arts out there.
Well, when I'm teaching, I differentiate between the two, right? If you're doing right, so this is straight on, raw, unadulterated. Everybody knows what you're doing, and this is. But yeah, the reason why he switched, and we all know this, right? The reason why he switched, partly because they didn't understand the art and they were doing stupid shit and hurting themselves, hurting other people. But his big point was to be doing ninjutsu, you have to be doing not just the ninja's way of doing things, right? Because you can't do that. Everything in ninjutsu is a variation on the conventional. So how the hell do you make up variations of something you don't understand, right? So ninjutsu is inclusive of both the Budo, right? So we have in Togaku-ryu, there's the 18 skill areas, right? Well, and if you have access, Budo winds have blown many things in my direction, to Tanimura's student handbooks. These things are listed in there historically. Manaka talks about this stuff, and he talked about it in the Bujinkan long before he formed his Jininkan. We always think of it about the ninja stuff. We have the ninja juhake, right? The 18 skill areas, right? Which obviously are historic because, horse riding was really important back in the day. Otherwise, you were walking or running everywhere. Okay? In today's world, how many different types of vehicles can you drive? And I don't mean a car, a pickup, or whatever. I mean a car, a motorcycle, boat, whatever, right? So his big point was, for a while, we've got to study this stuff because nobody's getting the ninja stuff right because you don't understand the basic conventional things. And then the masses just took over. I mean, in the at the point where he expanded the rank system for a second time, because when I was training in the very early 80s, right, went to Godan, and at Godan you were a fully licensed shidoshi, and see, this thing has still maintained, right? Just nobody talks about it because everybody's all caught up in like who's doing Ogyaku or Shiaku or whatever kata the official way, right? Now all the shit's wrapped around that, right? But at fifth dan, not only were you a fully licensed shidoshi, but you were authorized to set up your own network, right?
Mm.
Create your translation of the stuff to convey it to your students, because the shidoshi's job is to prepare the students to understand what the soke is teaching. So everybody watches the soke move and they assume that they understand it. What they don't understand is that they're filtering what they see through their experience, understanding, and perspective, right? So Shidoshi's job is to teach the skills necessary for a student to be able to now begin learning at that much higher level. Okay. So, but anyway, the first iteration was adding the 6th through 10th, and then that second iteration was adding the a return to the Godai, which was his way of doing the return to 0, right? So we start with the Godai, we end with the Godai. But what started out as a Judan Chi Sui Kafu Ku Menkyo, because in Japanese martial arts there are no numbers after 10, right? Because 10 is a return to 0. You have all the numbers, you hit 9, 10 is a return to 0 because the 1's now over in the 10's place, right? And so the 5, what we call beyond mastery levels, is a refocus at each level on Earth, because you've just done all this stuff. So how much is still but we're looking at it from a nature and a natural standpoint, right? So how many different ways is that reflected? Because what you thought you learned the first time you saw it, oh, it's so fucked up and crippled, it's not even funny. And I have to accept that as well. Seriously, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand that, you had how many freaking weeks or months of training and learning, and you think that you have that? No, what you have, and it was filtered through, right? Somebody who was uncoordinated, somebody who was half paying attention, somebody who was making a shit ton of assumptions, all kinds of stuff, right? And then, but at a certain point, you clear that shit out, right? So, but what went from like 11th, I'm making air quotes here, 11th, right? Judan Chimenkyo. 12th, Judan Suimenkyo, right?
Okay.
10th Dan, it's like a beyond, right? So you're a Judan, but you've mastered and understand the nature of this earth thing, right? Same thing with water, whatever, right? Well, how long did that take until we've got 11th Dan, 12th Dan, until Hatsumi Sensei himself just went with the flow because it was too fucking difficult. Just, so if he did that with a counting system, how much else did he do to fulfill on his original plan, which he likened to panning for gold? To get as many students run through the Bujinkan, hoping to find a nugget or two that would, so, but again, you have to read. You have to read the stuff that, isn't on video, right? You have to read between the lines, right? You have to understand a little bit about the way not only Japanese communicate differently than Westerners, but also, he makes a reference to, this is very much like the, no plays conveying Buddhist, teachings or, that kind of thing, right? And people, oh, okay. And then they just regurgitate it back. Okay, what are the principles that are being taught that were important enough that these people turned into plays, which itself is an expedient to introduce the lessons to people who don't want to go to a temple? Right? Just like comedians sneaking freaking philosophical things into comedy routines. They're the best freaking sages, right? Laughing the whole time, and at some point you might go, that shit's not really funny. That's actually that got me thinking. Fan-fucking-tastic. Okay. Most of Mikyo and the quantum stuff, and there's a book called The Tao of Physics. Oh, that's a thick book. That one and a bunch of things on human potential and whatnot. Keanu Reeves had to read all these things before he could even look at the script for The Matrix. But that's what the Matrix movies were. I mean, Hollywood got a hold of part 2 and 3. So part 1 was the more pure one, but so there was like, the gratuitous sex scene that served no freaking purpose, right? And then they danced in a cave and whatever, right? But every parts 1, 2, and 3, they all had a primary and a secondary principle that was being conveyed, right? Everything wrapped around it, and all the principles in these things that people take for granted, right? Well, that's just optional. Yeah, because Hatsumi Sensei, when they've said we really don't have to do that, right? That's just optional. He said, yeah. And then after they left, he'd look at us and go, "You don't have to breathe either, but we highly recommend it." And it was really funny because people would question this Mikyo stuff, and Stephen Hayes made that stuff up and whatever, right? And they're asking this question either in his office or in his living room, and we're surrounded by Mikyo statuary and mandala and shit like that. Yeah. So we want to be. See, I'm going to say something after this. That's anyway, because I had to face this for myself too. I'm not talking to anybody about anything that I didn't have to face. That demon I had to face, right? So everybody wants to be Hatsumi Sensei, or everybody wants to be a master teacher. Okay, James knows we have a T-shirt on the pro shop thing. Everybody wants to be a ninja until it's time to do ninja shit. Right? Everybody wants to be a black belt. It's time to do black belt shit. Right? It's the same thing. Everybody wants to be like the Grandmaster, but they don't want to have to go through the same process. Right? But I don't. After years of thinking about this stuff, I don't think that's entirely true for most people. I think most people want to be the Grandmaster or a Grandmaster, but because everybody hangs on every word. Everybody hangs on the lesson, right? Look at all the power, influence, knowledge, skill, whatever. Yeah, what went into that? Started off with a teacher who really knew his shit, because Hatsumi Sensei did kata collecting through how many systems, right? But he really wanted Budo. Finds Takamatsu Sensei, and Takamatsu Sensei tells him he's never going to be anything more than a gadfly, right? One of those flies that hang around on a horse's tail and eat shit, right? So there's a slap in the face, but that's where he started. And if anybody truly watches the early raw footage of Hatsumi Sensei training with Takamatsu and walks away from that without realizing Sensei sucked, right? Taijutsu wise, but he doesn't anymore, right? But when it went into that process, it's not like he slid out of the freaking womb that way, right? And there's proof, right? So anyway, let's see. Okay, so you chose it because of the authenticity. Other than that, what do you like most about the program? Like if somebody was asking you, like, why this one and why not just take that one over there? Because that one over there, like, I have to learn that much stuff and I can have a black belt. I can go to Japan, right? And get a black belt. Or why why does he have all that shit in that program? Right? They're going to say nobody else does, but again, we can only speak of anybody within our field, right? Or within our sphere of perception, influence, whatever. Because my curriculum is pretty much the same as all the teachers that I've had. So, but what do you like most about the program? Yeah, that's my question. And if you did anybody else's program, what'd you like about theirs?
I've looked into other people's programs, Van Donk and others, I think. Yep. There might be another one that does a distance program. I'm not sure.
Who?
Van Donk. I looked into his
Yeah, I know
program.
about that. His first one
There
came
might
out
be
on
other-
videotape. Yeah. Remke? Is it Remke?
Remke, yeah, Remke. He's another distance guy that I could have chosen, I suppose. The biggest thing I would have to say that made me not choose Remke, not choose Van Donk or anyone like. Not saying any of those
Well, you
teachers
didn't
are
need to
bad.
name names, but okay. Since we're
Yeah.
already out there, because we're not going to edit it. Got too much shit
Right.
going on to cut that out.
Pardon me. I have to battery myself.
Yeah, sorry. We're almost done.
Um,
I really appreciate everybody that's kind of like hung on this one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I still have to prove myself. I still have to authentically earn what I've got, what I'm going to get. I know I'm going to get it because I'm not going to stop until I do. But the fact that on some level we already had a little bit of a relationship, being that I came to the fall camp 1 year, like this was a couple years ago. The fact that you teach very much not like anyone. If someone's going to come and learn from you, they either grow a thick skin or have a thick skin, because you understand that a thick skin is needed in this world.
Well, we're training to be warriors.
Exactly. Exactly. So I don't know if I can put this into as many or as few words as and stay. You don't quit on me, so long as I'm not quitting on me too.
Well, we have a relationship,
And that's
not wrapped around
exceptionally valuable.
Tuition or whatever. Now,
Right.
Do I need to support my family and make sure that everything is operating and stuff? Of course, right? I think I'm pretty fair about it. But at the same time, I've already made a decision here that moving forward, this is not about me and you kind of thing, but I'm going to be quicker to cut students because I don't need their money. I was going to say, how do I say this nicely? There isn't. A student is either here to learn or they're not, right? And so if I have evidence that, and I understand, we can watch things and we can learn that way or whatever, but this is not a system where it's an academic memorization and then regurgitation. It's a process and it's an experience where it has to get into not just muscle memory, but every damn cell in your body, right? Your neural network, everything. Which is my big problem with people like, talking about, living forever because they'll just take your essence and put it into AI or whatever, right? Really, right? Science has already discovered that, your subconscious is actually stored in your entire freaking body and not some dark recess of your brain. So which part of you exactly are they going to plug into it? And then, right, that's why I can't like I can do online martial arts if I'm learning, if I'm doing a lesson or whatever, but I got to stand up and I have to move because it's a part of the process, right? It's like taking notes and writing. That's the active part of thinking, right? But can you imagine, even if they can do that, you imagine you're in a freaking box. You're not going to touch anybody. You're not going to sense anything. How long is that going to last before you're not just screaming in the darkness?
The things we complain about, pain, discomfort, that's
It's just going to be an empty, yeah. Wow. Not for me. Thanks. Anyway. All right. So this may be the hardest question. We're going to wrap up. Well, we'll open it to questions or comments or whatever, but this may be the hardest question, and it's not for me, but it's going to be directed at me. The question's for you. Okay. But I need you to be honest. Okay. What is it, what thing or things about our program or my program do you not like? Ooh.
There's the new way in which you're doing it is a much better than the way you had it originally, because it feels more organized, it looks more organized, it's more focused.
Oh, you mean the difference between just cutting up and putting out parts of like a seminar that was teaching all the lessons, and now okay, gotcha. Right.
Dedicated lessons, yes.
Okay.
The fact that they're split into 3 sections, which are the skills, the techniques, and the
personal development. Yeah. So you
development.
don't like it that way?
I do like. So I'm blasting the old way you had it done.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so we're definitely making improvements.
So let me say, keep reducing that.
Okay.
Keep adding what you've been doing. Is there I may have glossed over it, I'm not sure, but isn't there a part in the program that requires an in-person at some point? I mean, it's going to happen with me anyway.
Yeah, nobody can test for their black belt virtually.
Right. Okay.
Currently, that's the way that is. Yeah. Technically, in the Platinum Inner Circle group, I should be seeing my students in person at least once a year. And that doesn't matter if they come in for a seminar or private training or whatever, or we strategize and set up a seminar in their area.
Yep.
Right. I'm a traveler. I love to travel. And that's how I got my training in the early days. Right. So I got really good at doing that kind of stuff. So it's not like we're just going to like shoot fish. I mean, I guess we are shooting fish in a barrel. But I have a big mailing list and stuff, and there's people scattered all over the place. So, most people are not going anywhere for training. So I would like to say that they would jump at the chance if one just kind of popped up closer to where they are. But
I've been working on that. ...
Okay, cool. All right. So I think that's it. So when does your training group start back? Now, he's in, well, I would say literally, but not quite, because I looked at the map. Okay. Does your training group meet where you live?
Very close. I could probably walk to it.
So you're like Centerville, right? So you're near Macon, and you're closer to Macon than the other major points.
Warner Robins is a good large general area. There's Byron and other small towns nearby. Centerville is one of those that's really close to Warner Robins. If you know Macon, you know Warner Robins.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. So I just got curious, and I actually looked up the whole, Centerville kind of thing, because it sounded like something out of Batman or a Superman kind of thing. But anyway, so it's not Smallville, but yeah. So Centerville, and people name shit all kinds of things, and it has nothing to do with anything, right? Well, I bring up the map of Georgia, and like, dink, just left to center. So he's in the Centerville, Macon, that kind of region he was just talking about, right? So if you're in that area, and I may not be talking to anybody live right now, but we've got a bunch of people that are subscribed via the audio only podcast thing. So when does your group start back up again?
The schedule is normally the second or third weekend in October, going all the way until the second or third weekend in April.
Okay. All right. Wow. You trained in the rougher times. Very nice. Okay. So I know that you have a Facebook, or do you have a Facebook group, or is it your private page? Because I saw Old Ways Training. Is that a Facebook page?
I've got 2 pages and a group. So 2 pages. One is Old Ways Training, which includes the stuff that, like the basket classes that I teach and other things like that. Then I've got the Woodland Warrior page, which is specifically to the martial arts side of things, the Bujinkan side of things. Then I have an Old Ways Training group.
Any of what? I'm sorry?
An Old Ways Training group. So students or anyone can join into the group, but most people get their information from the pages. Okay,
so there's all the ways that you can find Lee on Facebook. Is there a website?
oldwaystraining.com.
There you go.
You can type in the search bar in Google Old Ways Training, and my listing will come up, which includes the website. Got that there.
Very cool. Okay, so there's extra information there. I'm sure you have, I don't know if you wrote articles or whatever, but you have other information about how to train and what's coming up, those kind of things, how to contact you. Okay, cool beans. All right. Well, I don't know, James, do you have access to anything, or do I need to bring up the chat? Things get resolved on your end?
Yes, things have resolved themselves.
All right. Okay, cool. So questions, comments, anything?
Rab877 over on YouTube said, I'm in the same boat Lee was in, longtime student, but have recently had a hiatus. And he felt the same way when he first met Charles Daniel and Stephen Hayes for the first time.
Can I speak to Rab for a second?
Sure.
Rab, what level of participation would you be willing to include in your life to make you feel more satisfied in that way? Whatever small step it is, make it. No matter how small it is, if you just buy another book, go to abebooks.com or thriftbooks.com and find an old used book of Ninja Volume 2. Get it.
Yeah, and I have a suggestion as well, and this is for everybody, right? Especially the ones that are lamenting that they're not training or whatever. There's a lot of people that think more about training. There's even more that spend their time thinking about not training. You can't do the positive, right? Your brain doesn't operate in the negative, but if we dwell in that, right, there's all this scientific proof that the more you think about anything, like depressed people make themselves more depressed because they don't get out and do things, right? I get it. They don't feel like it because their neural network is I get it, right? Because I'm going to get people that jump all over this shit. You don't understand. You know what? We've all been depressed at some point, okay? But the hard science is not the soft science. Remember, how do people make their money? Okay? Because hard scientists will tell you that that's true no matter what you want to believe, right? But the soft scientists make their money by how many times they get you on the couch. And they don't want certain problems fixed. Sorry, right? I've met a couple of them. I have one as a student, as a retired psychiatrist, who was prone to firing clients because if you're not going to help yourself, and you think that this is just a chat session, whatever, then there's other people that need help that actually want to do the work. But when it comes to making little changes, okay, for some people, at whatever point during the day, going into Ichimonji no Kamae 3 times on each side. I'm not even adding any other Kamae. Could be a different Kamae every day, whatever. Okay. And doing that consistently for 21 days will probably be the biggest change. And it will establish a pattern and a new habit that will literally rewire the system because you will miss it when you don't do it. That's how you know that something is entrenched. When you don't do it or you've been derailed, you will get agitated. You might even get angry, okay? Because the system is off, okay? And in Mikyo, the way to create a new habit pattern is to do the practice, whatever the practice is, every day for 21 days straight, no breaks. If you miss a day, the next day is 1. Right? Science tells us it can be as few as 12 repetitions. Now, I already feel dismayed at myself for pointing that out because I know that there are a lot of people who are now happy that it's not 21 because their only concern is what's the minimum that it will take. And I'm here to tell you that most people are already doing the minimum.
That's why you don't tell them the minimum. It's actually 30.
Oh, is it? Fair enough. I stayed corrected. No, but in Miko's 21, and now you're in this monastery or school or whatever, so they're checking in on you all the time, right? So the reason all that discipline is there and everything is structured is you can't get out of it. So of course you're going to make progress. Everybody makes progress when you're in a closed system. Mm-hmm. Like in the military, you got to go AWOL, but then you're going to jail, right? So you're not going home for very long because you signed a contract and you took an oath. So, which is why a lot of people won't do that because they don't want to be committed to anything. And that is a huge part of the reason why they don't have this. The people that do are in the top 0.1% of the entire world's population that can commit to anything long term. Most people want an out. They want to know minimums and they want to know out because at least you tried is not only a cop out, it's the mantra of failing.
Most people.
Yeah. Anyway, and I apologize if that was a kick to the nuts to anybody or whatever, but my job is not to be, how do I say this? Same way my teachers did. My job's not to be your friend. Right? It's to be friendly and it's to help you as much as possible, right? But it's to do what you need as a student and that's in your best interest. Right? It's not for me. I already know this stuff. And I've got other mentors kicking me in the nuts. So, right? What's that old cliche? Nobody ever said it was easy. Just said it was worth it.
Yeah.
The hardest part of all this stuff is getting started and establishing the habits, right? The first requirement that my white belt students have is coming to class consistently twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their next belt. It's not their next lesson. It's committing to and disciplining themselves to do it, because eventually it will become a habit, and eventually it will become part of their lifestyle. And we know that that happens when they can't go to training because they're ill or because of their work schedule or whatever, and agitation is created. Most people think the agitation that's created because they really want to train, but they can't figure it out. And they show up for things like this. And all. This is a huge step, right? If somebody's consistently coming, at least showing up on Monday nights for this, or Wednesdays for Whiteboard Wednesday or whatever, that's a huge step. Consistency, right? Consistency, because that rewires the system. This is not woo-woo shit. This is not, personal development, teacher teaches lessons. And then see, most people think in that terms and that term or in that way. And that's why they come up with these things like, well, that's an outdated idea. That doesn't work anymore. This is well, all you're doing is dancing around. That doesn't fit your preferential thing. And your preferential thing is, well, you're already doing your preferential thing. Right. So it's not easy. But then again, we wouldn't be attracted to it if it was fucking easy. We want to be different from everybody else. You got to be way different. You got to do way different than everybody else. Now, are you going to disturb and piss off all the people that want to be lazy? Absolutely. Okay? But you can't be judgmental to well, you can. You can do anything you want. You're a grown up, right? But it's being hypocritical, right? To knock somebody else for doing something, but here we are. Right? Just because we're not doing the exact same physical things, or we don't have the exact same beliefs or whatever, doesn't mean that we have to be running the same process if we're in the same state, same condition. Right? The biggest thing we need to stop doing is hating on those who have the success that we secretly really want. And it doesn't have to be financial. It could be martial arts stuff, whatever, right? Because the one thing they have in common that those who don't have is mindset, right? To do what needs to be done. And if they don't know how, if they're doing a bunch of stuff and it's not producing the results, well, then they need to change what they're doing, because, right, karma's karma. But these people that we hate, and that's all in the mandala, right? We're over here in the blue team, we're looking across at the red team, and we hate them because they do everything different than we do. When the reality is that when you're stuck and can't solve your problem and you keep doing shit the blue team way, the reality is that the red team has the fucking answer. We're just not going to do it. Well, because that's them. It's like the employee who is sought after to like step up and become management, but they've spent years hating management. It's us against them. And now they've got this opportunity to actually step into a new realm and a new life and a new income and all that. But either they can't because I'm not going to fucking become one of them, or they know how they and their coworkers, their friends, have talked about and thought about and whatever. Those people, what are my coworkers and friends going to think? So now there's fear driven. It's all kinds of this freaking mess, right? What we have to understand is that those who have what we want, they didn't get there thinking the same way or doing the same thing. I know it's not easy. It's freaking hard work. But again, right back to the t-shirt. Everybody wants to be a ninja until it's time to do ninja shit.
I used to always tell people that their discipline starts with their desire. Just keep it up.
Yeah, and motivation, people want to be motivated like it's a feeling. Motivation comes from your intellect. Right? My brother screwed the pooch. Right, my brother's sitting in jail for doing something that was the last person on my list that I would have ever thought. Right, and the thing that he did was not even on the list. Right, but he tried explaining the feeling. I said, "There's a reason we have an intellect. The intellect overrides the feeling to keep us from doing stupid shit, to keep us moving in the right direction." Right? So motivation is not a force or anything like that. This is not about wanting to do something. It's not about liking it, disliking it, whatever. Right? James knows the answer to this one. What is it, James? Knowing it needs to be done. Freaking do it because it needs to be done. You think he wants to show up at the dojo every freaking Monday, help me shoot videos for you people? Well, I don't know if he does or not. I'm just picking on him, right? I didn't interact with James enough for this whole thing, right? But the reality is, and you know what? There's a lot of times I don't want to shoot video because once I shoot it, I got to edit it. Once I edit it, I got to put up all the other shit that we deal with where service doesn't, work right, or there's a glitch, or got to upgrade the freaking pro, whatever, right? So, but I have people that depend on me. And it's not even about them expecting the lessons. It's, I made a promise and I want to have these programs in place because if I do it once, I leverage it. I don't have to keep, right? I did mod 1. We moved on to mod 2. Mod 1's sitting right there, right? So where I'm remiss at the moment is, and which I'm working on now, and I started last week, and my headache shows it, is promoting all that stuff, getting things, 3 to 5 little snippets or whatever up for every free ebook that I offer, or worksheet, or pointing to the Foundations of Ninja Self-Defense program, or pointing to the tactical Realm of the Tactical Warrior program, or whatever, right? So it's working itself. It's using the principle of leverage. Gee, hey, look, danger prevention tactics.
I think this would be a good idea to redo this too.
Just have to find another.
I don't want to put another thing on your plate, but.
Well, it would be, yeah, because we shot that right after 9/11.
Oh, yeah?
Danger Prevention Tactics was shot after 9/11. There was the production company that did that actually came to me to do a self-protection DVD, a safety thing, that the question was, can you do something, or can you help us do something that actually is a precursor to having to actually physically deal with violence, because that's going to take longer. And everybody and their brother is doing technique videos, or they do prevention videos. Isn't there something in there? And we've got this 8 phases of things, right? So danger prevention tactics is it is an example of phase 1 because it shows the kind of research into the kind of situations you could be in, right? And then it teaches tactics and whatnot. But it's phase 2, situational awareness, and phase 3, escape to safety, right? It's focused on those 2 pieces in very common. Well, you have it in every common thing, right? Driving your car or other public transportation, getting out of a building, all kinds of stuff. As a matter of fact, speaking of which, other things on my plate, my friend Mark Boer from Arkansas, a bunch of years ago, 8-9 years ago, holy shit, that long, we did an urban survival series. And so we did these webinars. Were they weekly, James? They weren't daily. I think they were weekly, right? And we did live 2 versions of every class. So there's 5 classes that we did on very common things, like getting caught up in a mass, like a mob kind of thing, um, where it could be riot. It could be there was a big thing there for a while where like people would show up at a grocery store parking lot. You know, it would just seem like it was random, and all of a sudden they were doing synchronized dancing and all that kind of stuff because they had pre-planned it, but it was just this big thing, right? Well, there were a bunch of freaking gangs and groups that developed a strategy where they would do the same thing and show up. And then as the group got bigger, everybody's standing around with their cell phones in their hand, waiting for the entertainments to start. And then they would just start attacking people and create a shock and awe and steal their money and shit like that. Because, yeah, and so, yeah, or just beat them up. Right.
Mm.
So we did a whole friggin' training on that. We did one on terrorism, like terror attacks, suicide bomber kind of stuff, lone wolf kind of things. But we did this whole thing. And then we did a special seminar at the end. It was at my place, and people came in, and we had scenarios set up. And so he taught some physical techniques from the system that he came through. He did Bujinkan a long time ago, but it was like way after that phase where people were doing less practical and more, classical for the sake of classical. Yeah. And highly disappointed. So he went off and learned other stuff. That's cool. Right. So he did stuff. And then I taught sessions from our perspective. So it gave, a bunch of his followers came in, our guys came, whatever. Right. And so it was a cool sharing of ideas, but that was the culmination of this whole thing. So he and I just had a conversation last month and a half ago. We are going to be redoing the urban survival series, and the plan is to create a series of seminars that we will actually do around the country and maybe into Canada or whatever, where we're going to take it on the road too. So that's the modern iteration of ninjutsu, right? But you will never hear me say I'm not doing modern ninja. I'm doing modern ninjutsu because that old classical shit doesn't work anymore. In the words of some of the Japanese daishihan, methinks somebody needs some more study. Right? So, yeah, good stuff. But I'm always open for those other things because I need to revamp my wilderness survival stuff. And I mean, there's no point in me reinventing the wheel or doing everything myself anymore because I have a network of students that have skill sets and whatnot. So, but in our original curriculum, and where the instructors are about to have a meeting to revamp things, because Shushi Whistler and I are really, really thinking that we need to bring the more elements of an older curriculum we had that a lot of students weren't doing. So we tabled a bunch of stuff and then we turned them into seminars that were optional or add-on training or whatever. But at every level, there was a first aid skill, people like an emergency first aid skill people had to learn. There was a conventional everyday, and there was a wilderness version of that skill. There was an actual survival skill set they had to learn. For instance, if they were doing fire building, obviously they had to learn, everything from tinder, kindling, small fuel, large fuel, that kind of thing. But they learned 9 different structures, because you never know what kind of environment you're going to be in, right? And those structures are all designed for primary purposes. I mean, you can use any structure if you're training, but whatever, right? So different weather conditions, and all the way into, are you in a training scenario, in which case you can build whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, right? Are you in a survival situation, right, where you're going to want as much smoke by day and as much light by night? So can you change how the fire works, right? Because you don't just need light and heat for cooking and whatnot. And a big thing that people miss is the psychological effects. You may have people that are traumatized, and just building a fire, right, will help them feel safer in the freaking dark, or just sitting out, right? How to not make yourself sick because you only sit with one part of your body facing the fire. and it's really, really freaking cold. So the back of you is freezing and the front of you is warmed. One of the quickest ways to get ill because you throw your system out of right. So we've got all these structures, but water purification and water collection and purification.
Filtration, purification. Yeah.
So we've got collection and purification, right? So we use the Godai. So everybody gets 5 collection methods, 5 purification methods. Filtration's 1, right? So where are you? What do you have available? When was the last time it rained? Right? Just all these factors. So we're going to bring some of these things back in. Every Q level had a weapon. We moved all the weapons into the black belt levels. Well, I hate that now. Right?
Yeah.
Because like we got some students that have come to seminars and whatnot, and they have it, but here's a mentality thing, because it wasn't required until this level up here, right? And now they're trying to like crash study to try to get the stuff in. And the reason we had it where we had it, right? But I had 4th Dans from other martial arts come in because they ran out of things to learn in the one they were in. They came in, I explained my curriculum, like, I got to learn all that. To be a ninja. People lived in the most inhospitable areas. Holy shit. By choice. So they could be left the fuck alone. Right? You want to live the life of your own design? You want to live a life of freedom and whatnot? Be in groups and associate with people who do that. But you know what? They're not partying all the time. They're not kicking back and they're alone or off doing their own little micro projects on their own a lot. Right? But again, it's not just how much you're willing to do, it's how much you're willing to not do that doesn't move you in the direction that you want to go. Right. And I'm not on a pedestal here. Right. When I teach these things, I'm spewing the lessons of my teachers because some of them aren't around anymore. Seno Sensei passed away, Oguri Sensei passed away, whatever. So, I mean, these are them still, Anyway, all right. So we got to wrap this up. So everybody knows how to get a hold of Lee. We'll try to post it in the descriptions in the channels and stuff as we do this. The other big thing I'm going to be doing instead of producing more content is taking these bigger, longer things and chopping them up because it'll make it easier for people to get through. It's the other thing I'm doing with some of my longer programs. Instead of just having one thing where they have to like figure out where they stopped and then go back, is to break them up a little bit more. Like you said, to the lessons that I've been doing currently, maybe it just seems more organized because I'm just splitting things out. That way I'm just, it's this. All right. So, all right. Cool beans. Anything else? Holy shit. 3 hours. God, James, you talk a lot. Rap. Anyway, I know we did it again. All right. Well, the average podcast these days on the really popular ones is actually 2 hours. So long gone. Well, there's still a couple of throwbacks and whatnot, but very rarely do you find a podcast that is an hour anymore. Like Joe Rogan's, they have a specific start time, but there's no planned end time because it's all about the content and and providing value, and that's my big thing. Right? So for anybody that complains that I charge too much for my tuition, balances out all the shit that I have to pay for that I give away for free. Because the service that we're going through right now, not free. Zoom, not free. Right? So, but I understand the people on the receiving end don't give a shit about that. They only care about what they're getting. I get it. Okay. But this is my way of proving value. And as, was this Cyrano? No, there was somebody it was a statesman from England who wooed Mary Queen of Scots. He was really ugly.
No,
but he got, huh?
I'm talking to my wife right now. She knows.
He got girls all the time. And what he told people was, give me half an hour to explain away my face. And he was not talking about his face, proving his wit, his intelligence, those kind of things. Right? Where most people are off is that they think that their impediments are impediments. Right?
Yeah.
One of the first lessons you learn in ninjutsu, or at least I did, was you push all of your limitations to the point where nature shows you that's a limitation. And then it's still not a limitation, because then you figure out how to use those limitations as strengths. So,
Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu. Everybody thinks Sun Tzu's, all about the average warrior, and only chapter 13, the use of spies, is for ninja. First time I started reading that, I got 2 paragraphs in, and I'm like, wait. And I went back and reread it, and I got the paragraph 3, and I went back because I thought maybe I was reading into things, right? This is like, I've been listening to Hatsumi Sensei teach this, right? Every freaking chapter is this. And I still have to dig it out. I made this promise a couple of months ago, and I didn't make a promise. I said if I could find it. I had not found it, but then again, I haven't earnestly gone to dig it out. I used to have a newsletter. It was called Hanya. Hanya is the Japanese transliteration of the Sanskrit prajna, which means insight. But it's not just insight; it's the insight necessary for enlightenment to take place. So it's correct perspective, it's correct study, that kind of stuff. So anyway, it was this newsletter that I wrote, and at one point I did a 13 part commentary. It might be 14, because I might have done an overview at the beginning, but it was a 13 part commentary on Sun Tzu's Art of War. And the commentary, if anybody's read Sun Tzu's Art of War, there's just this general, not General Lee. There is it's a general, right? And they oversee an army. And so here are all the tactics and things for moving and controlling and winning with that army. Okay. Well, my commentary translated Sun Tzu's work into the general controlling the army. So for those of you on Apple Podcast and all the other audio only kind of things, the general is your brain. It's the sharpest and most important and the most powerful weapon that a ninja owns. And then I pointed at my body for the army. So because it's all principles and concepts. So the question isn't whether or not this is applicable in the modern world or everyday life or whatever. It's how. Because if you're only looking at a general and an army as a general and an army, then you're missing the point, because the principles and concepts are universal and they show up 10,000 different ways. So the question isn't, right, how do I become a general? The question is, when are you going to start acting like a general, start thinking like a general, start tactically using the assets you have to get the stuff done that needs to be done, to gain more assets to increase your power and ability, and to continue to learn how to manage them in a way that, right? Can you imagine? Napoleon showing up for a freaking battle, and the other side, or the Spartans, right? 300 show up and fucking legions, right, of the Persians, right, and going, how are we gonna solve this? We're gonna die. They already knew that.
They didn't care.
The job was to hold them off for as long as possible. They didn't just ad hoc run out there and go, fuck you, and get attacked. They chose a very specific strategic point that created a bottleneck that allowed them to hold off for what? Was it 3 days? A week? Something like that?
Right? I think it was 3 days, yeah.
Yeah. But how the hell do you do that? you know your shit. That was all strategies and tactics. Because the techniques were hide behind the shields and poke anybody that got close enough to touch it. And they formed a dome, right? And so, but anyway, so when are you going to become, when are you going to think like a general? When are you going to, when are you going to stop listening to everybody else that's around you? Because your current environment is probably not made up of people like you're trying to or want to train to become. You can't take advice from people who are not already doing what you want to do and doing it well and consistently. I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's just stupid. Sorry, but it is. The day I stopped doing that, and no matter how much it hurt, took advice from and did the shit that my teachers did, everything changed. I mean, it got rougher too, because your habits are the easiest things you have. Okay. But think about this. Stop thinking about changing habits, because that will happen. That's just a natural process. Okay. The longer you do the new thing, the more your body, your brain will tear down the neural pathway that made that easy, because it needs to reallocate those proteins and enzymes to build a new neural network. And once you're able to do, once that's in place, you won't have to think about it anymore. But it's going to be rough until that happens. And the older you are, the longer it takes. Sorry. You're not 6 anymore. Okay? That doesn't feel like me. Good. You're not trying to be you. You're trying to be the new you. Okay? Give it a different name. Okay? If it feels like you, then you're doing the same shit you always do. Guess where that's going? Same shit you always get. Okay? Anyway, we're going to wrap this up because we're well into this. Lee, thank you very much. Last minute words of wisdom for anybody. If you were in my seat, well, you're not, and they might not ever see you again, so you can say whatever the hell you want. But any last words of inspiration or motivation or whatever? We don't motivate. Okay? It doesn't go anywhere anyway. Works for about 15 minutes. You don't believe me? Watch people do New Year's resolutions.
If you want this stuff, do it in whatever way that you can until you can do more, and then do that.
Stop lamenting that you can't do the perfect thing. Do what you can do. Do what you can do with what you have. Because this is no different than a self-defense situation. You can wish that you brought your weapon. You can wish that you learned that other technique. Ultimately, you have what you have, and that's all you have. What can you do with that? But it's not just what you have. Don't forget your environment. Don't forget
what they brought.
See, I talk about that stuff all the time, right? Hey, when you travel, you can't take your knife. I used to lament about that. Then I thought, shit, with the skills I have, if he didn't stab me first, he brought mine. The mindset is, well, thanks. You brought my weapon to the fight. Appreciate it. And when I resheath it, I don't have the sheath. I guess it's going to have to be you. But, Jet Li, a bunch of these guys, right? If you're in a room, the average person, if they were in a room and everybody else in the room was one of their enemies, most people's heads go to, I'm trapped in here with all these people.
They're trapped in me.
The warrior thinks absolutely. They're all trapped in here with me.
I'm surrounded.
As long as you don't try to fight them like, two guys in a freaking high school hallway, right? That's why Ninja poisoned the water supply the night before. No battles.
Ninjas win the battles days before the battle happens. Yep.
Yeah. All right, Lee, thank you very much. I appreciate it. James, do we have anything last minute pop in that we need to know about? You need to send James off to bed. James is a hard worker. Show James some love. Not that kind. You guys stop thinking that way. Okay. That's a different L word.
Lee hit on it already in the comments, but Rab asked where he could purchase your DVDs. Lee said
Lee's DVDs, or
yours,
I don't have
but
we
yet.
stopped burning
Lee
things on the
commented
DVDs a long time ago. They got
on his
freaking
side.
expensive. Yeah, so
Yeah.
everything's digital. Everything's digital, right? So yeah. So he's talking to us.
Yes.
OnlineNinjaAcademy.com. It's set up just like Coursera, where it's just the main page has a bunch of things, but you can click into those and go into dedicated pages, kind of split up. We're constantly revamping things in the back end. So if you click on something and I don't know, you bump into a glitch or whatever, just send us an email, warriorc@warrior-concepts-online.com. Okay. I better not hear any flaming comments because somebody couldn't get through or I didn't answer. Then we go back and dig in, or I say, send me a screenshot of the email that you sent and they misspelled warrior or whatever. Okay? So warrior, WARRIOR, the letter C, at warrior dash, that's the minus sign or the hyphen, concepts dash online.com. Okay. Awesome. And I'm constantly coming out with new programs. We have our fall ninja camp coming up November 8th to the 10th. The theme is body, mind, spirit integration. So we're going to be looking at every technique and every skill from a physical body, the thing that everybody looks at first, get that out of the way, right? And then where should your head be and what should you be focusing on? Even a roll, right? And then where's your heart? Where's your intent in that? Because ultimately, they're just three aspects of the same person. Okay? But the more cylinders you're firing on, the more power you have and the easier things are. Okay? But this training is not for, so I only have to do this, right? If I get this, then I can earn that bill. Dude, you can do whatever you want. But you may have to slightly bend an arm and brace with your forearm because you're not getting out of that skill. I know, Sensei, you got out of it, or you didn't get out of it, but I'm me and you're you, and so I should treat you like you're handicapped? Holy shit. No.
Just tell me where to put my foot.
My wife's knees crack, and her knees and her ankles crack terribly. Remember, she trains, right? So she's like, just leave me behind if something happens. I'm like, no. I just can't walk anywhere with you if we're hiding and trying to get away from anybody because the bad guys will know where we are. So here's the plan. I'm going to send you in a certain direction. I'm either going to wait it out or I'm going to move in a different direction. And so if the bad guys go tracking you, I can come up from behind. You're going to use me as bait? Certainly not going to use you as a shit magnet. I'm not hanging out with you if you're drawing them in. So anyway, and that's how I'm going to save us both. Kidneys. Audio only, people. I'm sorry I pointed at my head. It's a joke. All right. So anyway, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much. Lee, again, thank you for helping to make this first episode of the Student Perspective awesome. And I will see you, sir, and everybody else who shows up for them in class. Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at OnlineNinjaAcademy.com.